Your Majesty, after centuries of decline, only males of Homo sapiens are compatible with your unique reproductive system. Zara, queen of the Vorkarian Empire, nearly shattered the crystal goblet in her hand. An earthling, preposterous. The goblet, crafted from a single, flawless shard of Xylos crystal, trembled in her grasp, mirroring the seismic tremor that threatened to crack her carefully constructed composure. Around her, the throne room hummed with the low thrum of advanced technology energy conduits pulsed with azure light. Holographic displays flickered with complex data streams, and the air itself tasted faintly of ionized particles. Imposing Vorkarian guards, clad in obsidian armor that seemed to drink the light, stood motionless, their multifaceted eyes reflecting Zara's own barely concealed fury. "Explain yourself, geneticist Lorak," Zara commanded, her voice a low, resonant hum that echoed through the vast chamber. "Such a claim is unacceptable." Lorak, a towering figure even among the Vorkarians, remained impassive. His 6 eyes, arranged in a precise hexagonal pattern, focused on Zara with unwavering intensity. "The data is irrefutable, Your Majesty. Vorkarian fertility rates have plummeted to a critical level. After exhaustive analysis, we have identified a specific genetic marker present almost exclusively in Homo sapiens males, a marker essential for stimulating the Vorkarian reproductive matrix." He paused, his voice devoid of emotion. "Without it, the Vorkarian race faces extinction within a handful of generations." Zara's mind reeled. The Vorkarian reproductive system was a marvel of biological engineering, a complex dance of pheromones, bioelectrical fields, and genetic manipulation, far beyond the crude, primitive methods of most species. The idea that a simple earthling male held the key to its function was insulting. A wave of memories crashed over her, images of her childhood, spent in rigorous training, learning the ancient traditions of the Vorkarian Empire. She remembered the stern face of her mentor, the High Priestess, intoning the sacred vows. Maintain the purity of the Vorkarian bloodline. Guard against genetic contamination. Preserve the strength of our warriors. The holographic displays flickered, projecting graphs that charted the relentless decline in fertility rates. Lines plunged downwards, a visual representation of the Empire's impending doom. Lorak's voice cut through her reverie. "The decline is exponential, Your Majesty. Each generation produces fewer viable offspring. We have exhausted all other options." Zara closed her eyes, a rare display of vulnerability. "Very well," she conceded, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "Initiate a search. Identify suitable Homo sapiens male candidates, but I will oversee the selection process personally. The genetic match must be perfect, and there will be safeguards. We will minimize any potential for cultural contamination." Thousands of miles away, on a different world bathed in the humid heat of the Amazon rainforest, Mark Clark adjusted his camera lens, the sweat beading on his brow. He was a former Marine, hardened by years of combat, but now he found solace and purpose in documenting the delicate beauty of the natural world. His calloused fingers gently adjusted the focus, capturing the iridescent wings of a rare morpho butterfly as it flitted through the dappled sunlight. "Anything interesting, Mark?" His research partner, Dr. Anya Sharma, called out, swatting away a persistent mosquito. "Just the usual," Mark replied with a grin. "Except, wait a minute." He squinted, peering through the dense foliage. "There's something weird over there." A shimmering distortion hung in the air, like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day, but colder, sharper. An unusual energy signature crackled around it, making the hairs on Mark's arms stand on end. "What is it?" Anya asked, her voice permeated with concern. "I don't know," Mark admitted, his instincts screaming at him to proceed with caution. "But I'm going to check it out." He took a step forward, then another, drawn by an irresistible curiosity. Suddenly, A blinding light erupted from the distortion, engulfing Mark in its incandescent embrace. Anya screamed his name, but it was too late. Mark Clark vanished without a trace, leaving his team in stunned silence, the rainforest eerily still. Back on Vorkarion, Zara examined a holographic profile of Mark Clark. His image rotated slowly, revealing his muscular build, the rugged lines etched on his face, the intensity in his blue eyes. Former United States Marine, a disembodied voice announced. Expert in survival tactics, proficient in multiple combat disciplines. Genetic compatibility rating, 98.7%. Zara frowned. His appearance is unrefined, she commented, her gaze lingering on the faded scar that bisected Mark's left eyebrow. And his educational record is lacking. He possesses no formal scientific training. His genetic compatibility is exceptional, Your Majesty, the voice insisted. And his physical fitness is beyond reproach. Zara sighed, a sound that betrayed her inner turmoil. Transport him here, immediately, but I have grave reservations about this. Primitive. News of Zara's decision spread like wildfire through the Vorkarion court. Whispers of dissent echoed through the gilded halls, fueled by fear and prejudice. In a darkened chamber, Lord Vorlag, a high-ranking noble with eyes as cold and sharp as glacial ice, addressed a gathering of his allies. "This is madness," he hissed, his voice tinged with venom. "To pollute the Vorkarion bloodline with the genes of a human. It is an insult to our ancestors, a betrayal of our traditions. We cannot allow this to happen. The strength of the Vorkarion Empire will be diluted, its warrior spirit extinguished. We must act." The faces around him, grim and determined, nodded in agreement. The stage was set for a battle that would determine not only the future of the Vorkarion Empire, but also the fate of a single, unsuspecting human. Mark's head throbbed. A low, resonant hum vibrated through his skull, a sound that felt more felt than heard. His eyes snapped open, but the light was wrong, a sickly green, filtered through what looked like pulsating membranes instead of windows. He was strapped to a bio-bed, metallic restraints biting into his wrists and ankles. Assess, orient, react. The marine training, dormant for years, slammed back into his consciousness. The ship's interior was a bizarre tapestry of smooth, obsidian-like surfaces and glowing, organic conduits. He cataloged everything. The rhythmic hiss of ventilation, the faint smell of ozone, and something vaguely floral, the alien script etched into the control panels. No visible fasteners on the restraints. Energy weapons mounted on the walls. Minimal crew presence. Weak points, unknown. Flashback, Sergeant Miller barking, "Observation is your first weapon, Clark. Know your enemy, know your ground." Mark, sweating under the desert sun, meticulously sketching the terrain. In a sprawling chamber, bathed in the cool, blue light of holographic displays, Zara addressed her council. "The human male will arrive within the hour. Quarantine protocols are to be strictly observed. I understand the unconventional nature of this endeavor, but I will brook no breaches of security or decorum." Her voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, resonated with authority. "His living quarters must replicate Earth conditions as closely as possible," Zara continued, gesturing to a schematic projected in mid-air. "Atmosphere, temperature, gravity, all within acceptable parameters. Allocate additional resources as needed." She paused, a flicker of something akin to discomfort crossing her features. Such inefficiency. Yet the geneticist was adamant. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit alcove, Lord Vorlag, his chitinous brow furrowed in disapproval, met with his allies. "This infatuation with a primitive species is a sign of weakness," he hissed, his voice a raspy whisper. "Zara is jeopardizing the integrity of the Vorkarion bloodline. We cannot allow this to proceed." "Imagine," another noble, his face etched with disdain, chimed in, "a half-human heir. The very thought is repugnant." They exchanged glances, unspoken plans solidifying in the oppressive silence. Sabotage, discredit, eliminate. Back on the transport ship, Mark strained against his restraints, the metal biting deeper into his skin. He tried a simple greeting, "Hello. Is anyone understand me?" The Vorkarian crew, their faces masked and insectal, ignored him, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with cold indifference. Flashback. A younger Mark, fluent in Pashto, negotiating with Afghan villagers, his genuine smile bridging the cultural divide. From his photography kit, confiscated but not thoroughly searched, Mark had managed to conceal a small, multi-tool, a habit born of countless expeditions into the wilderness. Working with painstaking precision, he began to manipulate the locking mechanism of the restraints, the faint clicks lost in the ship's ambient hum. In her private chambers, Zara reviewed Mark's psychological profile displayed on a shimmering screen. Former Marine, wildlife photographer, adaptable, resourceful, compassionate. The report highlighted his strengths but also noted a tendency towards impulsivity, a challenge but perhaps a necessary one. A message flashed across Zara's screen. Lord Vorlag and associates detected engaging in unscheduled communications. Probable subject, human male. Zara's mind focused, predictable. Increase surveillance on Vorlag, she commanded, her voice sharp. And ensure the human safety. He is more valuable than Vorlag knows. Mark located a comms terminal and began to manipulate the controls, his fingers flying across the alien interface. The screen flickered to life, displaying a cascade of incomprehensible symbols. He input a basic distress signal, hoping against hope that someone somewhere would pick it up. But the signal was immediately blocked, a jarring red alert flashing across the screen. In the Vorkarian Senate, Vorlag's faction unleashed their first salvo. They presented doctored images and fabricated reports, painting Mark as a dangerous criminal, a mercenary with a history of violence. The debate raged, fueled by fear and xenophobia, the seeds of doubt sown among the senators. Zara watched the proceedings with a cold fury, her hand clenched into a fist. She knew Vorlag was behind this, but she needed concrete proof, patience, strategy, decisive action. Zara stood before a full-length mirror, her reflection shimmering in the polished metal. She adjusted the collar of her formal attire, a sleek, silver jumpsuit that accentuated her lithe figure. She felt a pang of uncertainty. This human. What would he think of her? Could she truly trust him with the future of her race? The transport ship shuddered as it entered Vorkarian atmosphere. Mark braced himself, his senses on high alert. Through a viewport he glimpsed a landscape of towering crystalline structures and swirling violet skies. Alien, beautiful, terrifying. The ship landed with a gentle thud. The restraints on Mark's wrists released. The door hissed open, revealing a squad of Vorkarian guards, their energy weapons trained on him. And then she appeared. Zara. She was taller than he expected, her skin a pale, luminous blue, her silver hair cascading down her back like liquid moonlight. Her eyes, large and intelligent, fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch in his throat. He stared back, equally captivated. An alien queen and he, a simple wildlife photographer from Earth. Their destinies, irrevocably intertwined. The air in the observation room hung thick with anticipation. Zara stood behind a wall of shimmering, transparent crystal, her violet eyes so unlike anything Mark had ever seen fixed on him. The room was sterile, clinical. Every surface gleamed, reflecting the cool blue light. Mark, still in the borrowed jumpsuit, offered a tentative smile. "Hello," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "Can you understand me?" Zara remained motionless, her expression unreadable. A translator device hovering near his ear clicked softly. "The Vorkarian Queen is observing you. Please remain calm." "Right." Easy for the machine to say. A moment stretched into an eternity. Finally, Zara spoke, her voice a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the room. "Human, you are Mark Clark." The translator rendered her words with a clipped, formal tone. "That's right," Mark replied, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. The crystal barrier shimmered, then vanished. Two Vorkarian guards, clad in sleek black armor, materialized on either side of Zara. She remained a few paces away, studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You will follow me," Zara commanded, turning and gliding towards a doorway. The simulated Earth environment was convincing. Sunlight streamed through fabricated windows, illuminating a small, grassy field. A gentle breeze rustled through the synthetic trees. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and blooming flower scents he hadn't realized he missed so acutely. "This is incredible," Mark said, turning slowly to take it all in. "Thank you." Zara inclined her head. "It is designed to minimize culture shock. Your primitive senses require acclimatization." He couldn't help but chuckle. "Primitive? I've seen some pretty advanced tech back on Earth. We're not all living in caves, you know." Zara's expression didn't change. "Your world is inefficient." "Chaotic, maybe," Mark conceded. "But it's also home, and I'd like to see more of yours. The real Vorkarian world, if that's possible." Zara paused, her violet eyes narrowing slightly. "Why, curiosity mostly," Mark admitted. "And a little bit of, well, a lot of bit of wanting to understand what's going on here." Later, in Zara's private chambers, Vorlag stood rigidly before her. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice low and urgent, "the human's request. It is concerning. Such curiosity is untrustworthy." Zara regarded him coolly. "He is a specimen, Vorlag, not a spy. Curiosity is inherent to his species." "Perhaps," Vorlag conceded, his multifaceted eyes glinting. "But it is a weakness that can be exploited. He will see things he should not see, ask questions he should not ask." He paused, letting his whine sink in. "Are you certain of his containment?" Zara's expression resolute almost imperceptibly. "I am certain of my control, Vorlag, but your concerns are noted." She dismissed him with a wave of her hand. The tour was carefully curated. Zara led him through gleaming corridors, past rows of bustling Vorkarian crew members. The air hummed with the low thrum of advanced technology. Guards flanked them, their weapons never far from reach. "This is impressive," Mark said, genuinely awed by the scale and complexity of the vessel. "What kind of propulsion system are you using?" Zara explained the principles of their warp drive, a system based on manipulating spacetime with focused energy fields. Mark listened intently, asking insightful questions about the energy requirements and the potential for instability. "You grasp the concepts quickly," Zara observed, a hint of surprise in her voice. "For a human." "Hey," Mark protested, feigning offense. "We're not all drooling Neanderthals, you know. Some of us even have advanced degrees." He noticed something, then a subtle tension in the air. The Vorkarian crew moved with a hurried, almost frantic energy. Their faces were etched with worry. "Is everything all right?" Mark asked, his voice low. "I get the feeling something's not quite right." Zara hesitated. "There are minor logistical challenges, a temporary biological anomaly affecting efficiency." She watched him closely, gauging his reaction. Suddenly, a high-pitched alarm blared through the ship. The lights flickered and the floor vibrated violently. "What was that?" Mark asked, his eyes darting around. Vorlag, who had been trailing behind them, stepped forward, his expression grim. "A minor malfunction, nothing to concern yourself with, human." But Mark wasn't buying it. He'd spent enough time in combat zones to recognize the signs of a system failure. He scanned the corridor, his eyes narrowing as he focused on a flickering panel near the ceiling. "The auxiliary power conduit," he said, pointing. "It's overloaded. The shielding's failing. You need to reroute the power flow before it blows." Zara stared at him, her violet eyes wide with surprise. "How did you?" "Marine training," Mark said with a shrug. "We learned to spot potential hazards. Now are you going to fix it, or are we going to stand here and watch the ship explode?" Zara snapped into action. She barked orders in Vorkarian, her voice sharp and commanding. The guards rushed to the panel, their movements precise and efficient. Within minutes, the alarm subsided and the lights returned to normal. The floor stopped vibrating. The conduit has been rerouted, Vorlag announced, his voice tight with barely suppressed annoyance. The situation is stabilized. Zara turned to Mark, her expression softening slightly. You averted a potentially serious incident. Thank you, Mark Clark. Just doing my part, Mark said with a wry smile. Happy to help. He paused, then added, seriously though, is there anything I can do? I'm not exactly thrilled about sitting around in a simulated forest while the ship's falling apart. Later, alone in her chambers, Zara replayed the events of the tour in her mind. The human's quick thinking, his unexpected knowledge. It was intriguing, but also unsettling. He was far more intelligent, more adaptable than she had anticipated, and his willingness to help, his genuine concern. It was a distraction she could ill afford. Vorlag, meanwhile, was not idle. He activated a secure comm channel, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with malice. Scientist Thrax, he hissed. The human is proving problematic, subtly sabotage his environment, make him uncomfortable, but ensure it appears accidental. Back in his simulated Earth environment, Mark was beginning to feel more at ease. He'd even managed to learn a few basic Vorkarian phrases from the translator. He watched the Vorkarian crew members through the transparent wall of his enclosure, observing their customs, their interactions. He noticed their rigid posture, their efficient movements, their unwavering loyalty to Zara. Zara, in turn, observed him. She watched him interact with the Vorkarian crew members who delivered his meals and maintained his environment. She noted his respectful demeanor, his genuine curiosity, his lack of fear. He treated them as equals, not as servants or inferiors. She found herself questioning her preconceived notions about humans. Perhaps they were not as primitive, as chaotic as she had believed. The tour will continue tomorrow, Zara announced, her voice echoing through the translator. I will show you the medical bay. You will meet the royal geneticist. Mark nodded, his expression thoughtful. I look forward to it. Zara paused at the doorway. There will be genetic testing to determine compatibility. I figured, Mark said, shrugging. Let's get to it. Zara gestured, and a shimmering field of emerald energy enveloped Mark. This is the initial genetic scan. It will map your biological structure at a submolecular level. Her voice, amplified by the chamber, echoed with a cool, clinical detachment. The air thrummed with a low, resonant frequency that vibrated in Mark's teeth. He felt a prickling sensation all over his skin, like static electricity clinging to him. An acrid, metallic scent filled the air, stinging his nostrils. Submolecular, huh? Mark said, trying to keep his voice light. He could feel the energy probing him, mapping him. Hope you don't find any skeletons in my closet. Zara didn't smile. The purpose is purely scientific. Any anomalies will be noted. The emerald light intensified, then abruptly vanished. A series of glyphs, glowing with an internal luminescence, scrolled across a nearby screen. Zara's brow furrowed. Anomalies detected, several. Mark's stomach tightened. Anomalies? What kind of anomalies? Inconclusive at this stage. Further analysis is required. Zara's tone was clipped, betraying a hint of concern. We will proceed with a more invasive scan. She gestured to a large, cylindrical device that hummed ominously. Later that evening, back in his assigned quarters, Mark felt off. A persistent throbbing behind his eyes, a slight dizziness that made the holographic projections on the walls swim. He reached for a glass of water, but his hand trembled, sending droplets splashing onto the polished floor. The recycled air tasted stale, almost bitter. The light flickered erratically. Damn it, he muttered. Space sickness already. He dismissed it as adjustment, but as the hours wore on, the symptoms intensified. A creeping numbness spread through his limbs, and the disorientation worsened. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the bed. The room seemed to tilt, the alien architecture mocking him with its impossible angles. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just space sickness. This felt deliberate. His Marinin reigning kicked in, assess the situation, identify the threat, react. He remembered his basic training. He sniffed the air again, this time deliberately. Faint but there, something like almonds but sharper, metallic. Cyanide? No, not quite, something else, something. Alien. He activated the comm system. This is Mark Clark, I'm experiencing some unusual symptoms. I suspect possible environmental contamination in my quarters. A cool, dismissive voice responded. Your symptoms are likely due to the stress of acclimating to the Vorkarian environment. Rest is advised. Medical staff will attend to you during scheduled rounds. Negative, Mark insisted. This is not acclimation. I'm detecting a potential neurotoxin. I need a full environmental scan now. The line went dead. He knew he was being dismissed, typical human intuition against Vorkarian arrogance. He could almost hear the whispers, primitive human imagining threats, but then a flicker on the wall screen. Zara's image appeared, her expression unreadable. Report. Her voice was direct, commanding. Your Majesty, Mark said, trying to stand at attention despite the dizziness. I believe I've been exposed to a neurotoxin in my quarters. The medical staff dismissed my concerns. Zara's eyes narrowed. Override medical protocol. Conduct a full environmental analysis of Mr. Clark's quarters, immediately. Her gaze shifted back to Mark. Describe your symptoms. Within minutes, a team of Vorkarian technicians swarmed his quarters, their multi-limbed bodies moving with unsettling efficiency. They scanned the air, the surfaces, the water supply, their instruments emitting high-pitched whines and clicks. One of the technicians, a lanky creature with iridescent scales, approached Zara. Your Majesty, traces of Vorlarium-7 detected in the air supply. Concentration levels are low but sufficient to induce the reported symptoms. Vorlarium-7, a rare, highly potent neurotoxin derived from a deep-sea organism on Vorka. Its effects were insidious, targeting the nervous system, causing disorientation, paralysis, and eventually death. Zara's face was a mask of controlled fury. Seal off this section. Identify the source of the contamination. The investigation revealed a small, almost invisible breach in the air filtration system, near the ventilation unit above Mark's bed. A microscopic nozzle had been inserted, releasing a controlled dose of Vorlarium-7 into the air supply. Zara summoned Vorlag to her private chamber. The room was bathed in the soft violet light of the Vorkarian sun, casting long, distorted shadows across the polished floor. Vorlag, Zara said, her voice dangerously calm. Vorlarium-7 was mRND in Mr. Clark's quarters. Do you have any knowledge of this? Vorlag, his face impassive, met her gaze. None, Your Majesty. I assure you I am as surprised as you are. It is likely that the human is mistaken or even attempting to fabricate evidence. The evidence is conclusive, Zara countered. The neurotoxin was introduced through a deliberate breach in the air filtration system. Then I suggest a thorough investigation of the human's background. Perhaps he brought the toxin with him, intending to cause disruption. Zara's eyes flashed with anger. That is preposterous. I will not tolerate such accusations without proof. She paused, her gaze hardening. A full security lockdown is in effect. I want a forensic audit of the ship's environmental control systems. Every access log, every maintenance record, every anomaly. I want answers, Vorlag, and I want them now. Back in his quarters, feeling slightly better after receiving a Vorkarian antidote, Mark paced restlessly. The Vorkarian investigation was methodical, thorough, and glacially slow. Bureaucracy, it seemed, was universal, even in space. He couldn't just sit and wait. Someone had tried to kill him. He needed to understand why. He examined the environmental control panel in his room. It was a complex array of glowing symbols and pressure-sensitive plates, utterly alien to him. But the principles of engineering were universal. He remembered his time in the Marines, tinkering with engines and weapon systems, figuring out how things worked. He spent hours studying the schematics, tracing the flow of air, analyzing the pressure gradients, deciphering the Vorkarian symbols. He cross-referenced the data with the ship's manifest, the crew's schedules, the security logs. Finally, he found it. A hidden access log buried deep within the system's memory. A sequence of commands that had bypassed the security protocols, altered the air filtration settings, and released the Vorlarium-7. The log was wiped clean immediately after the event, but the timestamp remained. And the access code belonged to Vorlag. He rushed to Zara's private chamber, bypassing the security guards with a wave of his hand, a privilege he'd apparently earned. He found her standing by the panoramic window, gazing out at the swirling nebulae. Her face was etched with worry. "Your Majesty," Mark said, his voice urgent. "I have proof. Vorlag was responsible for the neurotoxin." He presented the data he'd extracted from the environmental control system. Zara studied the data, her expression hardening. "This is damning, but it is not conclusive. It could be a fabrication." "It's not," Mark insisted. "I analyzed the system myself. The access code is a direct match to Vorlag's." Zara remained silent for a long moment, her internal conflict palpable. Finally she spoke, her voice heavy with regret. "I will relieve Vorlag of his duties, pending a formal MRRY. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for bringing this to my attention." Later that night, Zara summoned Mark to her private garden, a secluded sanctuary filled with bioluminescent plants and the gentle murmur of artificial waterfalls. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "The medical staff should have taken your concerns seriously, and I should have trusted you sooner." Mark stepped closer, sensing her vulnerability. "It's okay," he said gently. "I understand. You were relying on people you trusted." "Vorlag has been a loyal advisor for many years," Zara said, her voice infused with sadness. "I find it difficult to believe he would betray me." "Maybe he's not acting alone," Mark suggested. "Maybe he's part of something bigger." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "Perhaps you are Mr. I need your help, Mr. Clark. I need you to help me uncover the truth." Mark took her hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. "You have it," he said. "You have my help, you can trust me." As the days passed, the genetic tests continued, and the results grew increasingly. "Intriguing, Your Majesty," the royal geneticist reported, his voice tinged with Mr. Eitman. "The latest analysis of Mr. Clark's DNA has revealed something extraordinary. He possesses a rare genetic marker designated VR77. This marker is exceptionally compatible with the Vorkarian reproductive system. In fact, his compatibility rating is off the charts." Zara's eyes widened. "VR77, that marker is extremely rare, almost extinct." "Indeed, Your Majesty. It is believed to be linked to an ancient Vorkarian lineage, a lineage thought to have vanished centuries ago." The news sent shockwaves through the Vorkarian court. A human, possessing a genetic marker linked to their own ancient past. It was almost mystical, but the implications were far more complex. The geneticist's follow-up was even more disturbing. "We have also determined that T-Mr. Vorlarium-7 used in the attempt to poison Mr. Clark was specifically designed to target individuals with the VR77 marker. It appears someone knew about his unique genetic makeup." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a personal attack against Mark. It was an attack against her plans for the future of the Vorkarian Empire. She realized with a sickening certainty that Vorlag's actions were not isolated. He was part of a larger conspiracy, a plot to prevent her from choosing a human heir, to undermine her authority, to plunge the empire into chaos. Just then, a coded message flashed across her private comm screen. It was from a loyalist within her court, a trusted advisor who had risked everything to warn her. "Imminent coup attempt. Vorlag and allies mobilizing. Strike force en route to your location. Trust no one." "Assistance," Zara finished, her voice tight with suppressed urgency. She stepped closer, the faint scent of ozone and something akin to crushed gemstones emanating from her. In her hand she held a data crystal, its facets catching the light of her private chambers. This was intercepted within the Royal Guard's internal comms. It's coded. Mark took the crystal, turning it over in his hands. The Vorkarian script swirled across its surface, indecipherable to him. Coded how? A layered cipher, using references to pre-unification history. Antiquated but effective if you don't know where to look. Zara paced, her metallic heels clicking softly on the polished floor. My analysts are working on it, but you want a second opinion, Mark finished, his eyes already scanning the crystal, searching for patterns. Someone without the Vorkarian mindset. He grinned. Old Earth history wasn't exactly my forte, but I know a thing or two about breaking codes, military training. He called up the data on his Omni tool. Lay it on me. Zara transferred the data. It speaks of discontent, of a weakening of the bloodline, of opportunity. Mark's brow furrowed as he began to work, using his Omni tool to isolate repeating sequences and cross-reference them with historical data. Sounds like someone's planning a coup, he said grimly after a few minutes. They're talking about harvesting the ripe fruit. That's a reference to the Vorlag rebellion, right? Meaning they're planning to strike soon. Vorlag. Zara's fist clenched. He is under house arrest, but clearly that is not enough. It never is, Mark muttered, thinking of countless historical examples. You need to gather your loyalists, prepare for a potential attack. Harden your defenses. Assume they know your security protocols. Change them. He looked up at her. Think like they think. Where would they strike? What are their objectives? Zara nodded, her expression hardening. I will initiate a discreet investigation to identify the source of this message and confirm the plot's validity. I have resources. She paused. And I trust your judgment. Good. While you're doing that, Mark said, already moving towards the chamber's exit, I'd like to request access to Vorkarian medical databases, specifically anything related to the infertility crisis. Zara turned sharply. Why? I have a theory, Mark explained, based on human physiology. Sometimes infertility isn't just a genetic problem, it's an environmental one. A deficiency, a toxin, something affecting the entire population. Zara considered this, her expression thoughtful. It is unconventional, but I have learned that your human perspective often yields unexpected results. She hesitated. I will grant you access, Mark, but be warned, the political climate is volatile. Uncovering sensitive medical information could make you a target. I appreciate the concern, Mark said, meeting her gaze, but I'm not afraid to dig. Later, immersed in the Vorkarian medical databases, Mark felt like he was drowning in data. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing complex genetic sequences and physiological analyses. The sheer volume of information was staggering, but he focused, searching for patterns, anomalies, anything that stood out. Hours blurred into a single-minded pursuit. He cross-referenced genetic markers with dietary habits, environmental factors, and even social strata. Finally, a pattern emerged. A consistent deficiency in a specific nutrient, Vorsium-7, across the entire Vorkarian population. Meanwhile, in his gilded prison, Vorlag paced restlessly. He reached into a hidden compartment in his desk, retrieving a small, palm-sized device. It was a pre-unification comm unit, using obsolete frequencies that were rarely monitored. He activated it, hissing a coded message into the mouthpiece. The harvest moon approaches. Prepare the scythes. Unbeknownst to Vorlag, Zara's loyalists had anticipated his move. They had been monitoring his quarters, and the coded message was intercepted, decoded, and relayed to Zara within minutes. The timing and location of the coup attempt were now known. Back in the medical archives, Mark was poring over the data when he noticed something even more disturbing. The levels of Vorsium-7 weren't just low. They were consistently low, generation after generation. It was as if something was actively preventing the Vorkarians from absorbing or synthesizing the nutrient. He pulled up the data on the Vorkarian food production system, his brow furrowing. The nutrient was supposed to be synthesized within the food itself during the cultivation process. But the synthesis pathways were blocked deliberately. He contacted Zara immediately. That evening, Zara stood on the balcony of her private chambers, overlooking the glittering cityscape of Vorka Prime. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of metallic blossoms. Mark stood beside her, his presence a comforting weight. "I have made the announcement," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have declared my intention to choose an heir soon. The pressure, it is immense." "It's forced their hand," Mark said, his gaze fixed on the city below. "They'll have to move quickly now." A sudden alarm blared through the palace, its piercing shriek cutting through the night. Red lights flashed, bathing the city in an ominous glow. "Vorlag," Zara hissed. "He has escaped." "Then it begins," Mark said grimly. Later, as Zara and Mark prepared for the inevitable confrontation, they found themselves alone in her private sanctuary. The air was thick with unspoken emotions. "Mark," Zara said softly, turning to face him. I am grateful for your presence. For your strength, for everything." Mark reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Zara," he said, his voice equally soft. I care about you, more than I thought possible." Their eyes met, and for a moment the chaos outside faded away. They were two souls bound together by fate, by circumstance, by something deeper. Suddenly, a frantic message crackled over the comm system. "Your Majesty, we have identified the source of the coup plot. It is Counselor Lyra." Zara's eyes widened in disbelief. "Lyra, but she is one of my most trusted advisors." "And there's more," the voice continued, its tone urgent. "She is responsible for the alteration to the food production system. She deliberately sabotaged the Vorsium-7 synthesis." Zara's face hardened with fury. "Summon her, now." Within moments, Counselor Lyra was brought before Zara and Mark, her face pale but defiant. "You are accused of treason, Lyra," Zara said, her voice cold and hard. "Of plotting a coup against the crown and of deliberately poisoning the Vorkarian food supply." Lyra laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Treason. I am preserving the Vorkarian bloodline. You, Zara, are weakening it by even considering a human heir. Our empire cannot be diluted by outsiders. You deliberately caused the infertility crisis." Mark asked, his voice incredulous. "You condemned your own people to extinction." "A necessary sacrifice," Lyra said, her eyes blazing with fanaticism. "Better to die pure than to live defiled." Before Zara could respond, the palace shook violently. Explosions rocked the structure, and the sound of blaster fire echoed through the corridors. "It has begun," Zara said grimly. "Lyra's forces are attacking." As if on cue, Lyra raised her hand, and a squad of heavily armed Vorkarian soldiers burst into the chamber, weapons raised. "For the Empire!" Lyra cried. Mark reacted instantly, shoving Zara behind him and drawing his sidearm. "Looks like we're doing this the hard way," he muttered. The battle for the palace had begun. Mark, drawing on his marine training, quickly assessed the situation. He identified key chokepoints and lines of fire, directing Zara's loyalists to strategic positions. The palace's defense systems were formidable, but he noticed a vulnerability. A specific type of energy weapon, commonly used by Lyra's forces, could overload the shields if fired at a certain frequency. He contacted the palace engineers, explaining the vulnerability and instructing them on how to modify the shield generators to counteract the energy weapon. His human ingenuity, combined with Vorkarian technology, proved to be a powerful combination. As the battle raged, Zara discovered a disturbing truth about Lyra's motives. It wasn't just about preserving the Vorkarian bloodline, it was personal. Lyra had harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Zara for years, stemming from a past political rivalry. The coup was not just about power, it was about revenge. Then, a chilling message arrived, relayed from a captured Lyra operative. Counselor Lyra has deployed a bioweapon. It will sterilize the entire Vorkarian population. The future is lost. The chemical sting hit Mark's nostrils an instant before the alarms blared, a high-pitched, oscillating whine that vibrated through his bones. He grabbed Zara's hand, pulling her towards the nearest access tunnel. Bioweapon. They deployed a bioweapon. The corridors were already filling with panicked Vorkarians, their chitinous armor clattering against the metal walls as they stumbled, coughing, many collapsing onto the polished floors. He could see the telltale signs of faint, shimmering haze in the air, a subtle discoloration of the usually vibrant purple skin. Zara, despite the chaos swirling around them, remained a pillar of icy calm. "Seal the vents, all of them, now." Her voice, amplified by her comlink, cut through the din. Mark, his mind racing, spotted a maintenance panel. Vorkarian tech was still largely a mystery to him, but basic air filtration principles were universal. He ripped open the panel, sparks flying as he bypassed the energy grid. "Zara, get me schematics for the ventilation system. I need to isolate the affected zones." While Zara barked orders into her comm, coordinating medical teams and security forces, Mark wrestled with the alien controls. He identified the main distribution ducts, and, using a combination of Vorkarian commands and good old-fashioned human ingenuity, began sealing off the vents, one by one. Each hiss of a closing vent was a small victory against the encroaching chaos. He remembered his grandfather, a HVAC engineer, showing him how air filtration systems worked. "Think of it like the lungs of a building, kid," he'd said. "Keep the bane, tough out the good stuff in." That simple lesson, learned decades ago on a dusty construction site, was now the key to saving an alien civilization. Within minutes, Mark had managed to isolate the affected sections. The shimmering haze lessened, the coughing subsided slightly. It was a temporary fix, a band-aid on a gaping wound, but it bought them time. Zara announced a palace-wide lockdown, her voice echoing through the comm system. "All personnel are to remain in designated secure zones. Filtration protocols are now in effect." "This is not a drill." She met Mark's gaze, her gray-green eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and relentless drive. "It's not enough, is it?" "No," Mark admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's just slowing it down. We need a cure." He began accessing the palace's central database, searching for information on the bioweapon's composition. Vorkarian science was advanced, but it was also different. He needed to find a bridge, a way to translate their data into something he could understand. Hours blurred into a frantic race against time. Mark, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline, pored over holographic displays, his fingers flying across the alien keyboard. He cross-referenced Vorkarian genetic databases with human medical texts, searching for a common thread. The pressure from Zara's council was mounting. Holographic projections of stern-faced nobles flickered around them, their voices imbued with fear and accusation. "Your Majesty, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. We must consider surrendering to Lyra. Prolonging this resistance is futile." Zara stood firm, her spine perfectly upright. "We will not surrender. We will find a solution." "I have faith in Mark's abilities." And then a breakthrough, a flicker of recognition in the data stream. "Zara, I think I've got something, the bioweapon. It targets a specific Vorkarian genetic marker, a marker that's linked to their immune system. It's like a key fitting into a lock." "Can it be reversed?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Potentially, yes. If we can create a gene therapy, a counter-agent that blocks the bioweapon's access to that marker." He was already working on a solution, his mind firing on all cylinders, combining Vorkarian medical technology with human medical principles. He began synthesizing a preliminary version of the gene therapy, the complex machinery humming and whirring around him. Zara watched him work, her expression softening. She reached out and took his hand, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You are incredible, Mark. You give us hope." He looked up, meeting her gaze. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Just doing what I can." A sudden tremor shook the palace. Alarms blared anew. "Your Majesty," a frantic voice crackled over the comm. "Lyra's forces are attacking the main gate. They're attempting to breach the lockdown." Zara's hand tightened on his. "We'll deal with them, together." She activated her energy blade, the humming weapon casting an eerie glow across her face. Mark grabbed a discarded Vorkarian pulse rifle, hefting its unfamiliar weight. They fought side by side, repelling the invaders with a combination of Vorkarian firepower and human tactical ingenuity. It was a brutal, desperate struggle, but they held the line. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the attack subsided. The palace was scarred and battered, but the lockdown held. Mark turned back to his work, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He had synthesized a preliminary version of the gene therapy, a shimmering, translucent fluid held in a crystalline vial. "Almost there," he muttered, "but it's unstable. I need something to stabilize it. A rare Vorkarian enzyme. It's only found in the Crimson Caves, a remote location on the far side of the planet." He looked at Zara, his heart pounding. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the world pressing down on them. Then impulsively he leaned in and kissed her, a desperate, heartfelt kiss that spoke of gratitude, admiration, and a growing, undeniable connection. The kiss was broken by a shrill tone from Zara's comm. Her face paled as she listened. "My sister. She's been affected." The bioweapon. Mark felt a pang of sympathy. "Your sister? I didn't know you had one." Zara's voice was tight with emotion. "We're estranged. I was forced to make political moves against her years ago. It was necessary for the good of the Empire, but—" Her voice trailed off. He saw the conflict in her eyes, the impossible choice she faced. "You need to save her," he said softly, "but the coup, the palace—" "I'll get the enzyme," Mark said, his voice firm. "I'll go to the Crimson Caves. You need to be here leading your people." Zara hesitated, her gaze searching his. "It's too dangerous. I can't ask you to do that." "You don't have to ask," Mark replied, his eyes locking with hers. "I'm doing it." A flicker of gratitude, of something deeper, passed across Zara's face. She nodded slowly. "Very well, but be careful, Mark. I'm placing a great deal of trust in you." And with that, she released him, leaving her undefended, placing her fate and the fate of her empire in the hands of a human. Moments later, as Mark prepared for his journey, Zara was attacked. A Vorkarian noble, his eyes burning with fanaticism, lunged at her with an energy blade. "You have been compromised, Zara. Your obsession with this human has blinded you. You have turned against your own people." Mark, after a harrowing journey through the Crimson Caves, secured the enzyme. He raced back to the palace, his heart pounding with hope. But the hope died in his throat as he approached the main gate. It was heavily guarded, but not by Zara's forces, by Lyra's. And the banner hanging above the gate wasn't Zara's royal standard, but the crimson sigil of the rebellion. Zara had been captured. The comm crackled to life, spitting static before a voice, distorted but urgent, cut through. "Mark Clark, can you hear me?" Mark, huddled in the abandoned transport depot that served as his makeshift headquarters, grabbed the device. "This is Clark. What's the situation?" "Queen Zara. She's been taken. Lyra's forces stormed the palace. They control the capital." Mark's gut twisted. "Taken how?" "The palace defenses were impenetrable. They had help from the inside." The voice paused, heavy with disgust. "Vorin, he betrayed her. Vorin, Zara's most trusted guard, always at her side." The revelation hit Mark like a physical blow. "Vorin? Impossible." "It's true. He disabled the shield generators, allowing Lyra's shock troops to breach the perimeter. We're a small cell of loyalists operating underground. We can help you get her back." Mark felt a surge of hope battling against the cold dread that threatened to consume him. "Who are you?" "We call ourselves the Queen's Guard. I am Kale. We have been watching you, human. We know of your unique relationship with our queen. And you trust me. We trust Zara's judgment, and we see your persistence. Meet us at the old aqueduct, grid coordinate Delta 94. Come alone." The comm went dead. Mark spent the next hour recalibrating his weapons and reviewing the palace schematics he'd managed to acquire. Voron's betrayal changed everything. He knew the security protocols, the weaknesses in the system. He'd essentially handed Lyra the keys to the kingdom. As he prepared to leave, his comm pinged again. A visual feed flickered to life, showing Lyra addressing the Vorkarian people from the palace throne room. Her image was cold, imperious. "People of Vorkarius," Lyra's voice boomed, amplified across the city. "The reign of Zara is over. She has been captured and awaits judgment for her weakness in her unnatural alliance with an alien. I, Lyra, am your rightful queen. All loyalist forces will lay down their arms and swear fealty to me. Any who resist will be deemed traitors and face swift execution. Zara will be publicly executed in 3 sun cycles to demonstrate the fate of those who betray Vorkarian tradition." 3 sun cycles, less than a week. Mark's blood ran cold. He arrived at the aqueduct to find Kale waiting, a tall, muscular Vorkarian woman with a stern face and eyes that burned with fierce loyalty. Several other rebels stood behind her, armed and ready. "Clark," Kale greeted him, her voice clipped and professional. "We don't have much time. Voron has tightened security throughout the palace. Lyra suspects a rescue attempt." "I know the palace security systems," Mark said, spreading out the schematics. "But Voron knows them better. We need a way in that he doesn't expect." Kale pointed to a barely visible line on the map. "There's a hidden passage, used centuries ago by the Royal Guard. It leads to the lower levels near the energy core. Only a few living Vorkarians know of its existence." The energy core. Why would Zara be held there? Lyra is draining her life force, using it to amplify her own power. The core is the only place with the necessary equipment. Rage, cold and sharp, pierce through Mark. "Then that's where we're going. We hit them hard and fast. Get Zara out of there." The infiltration was a nightmare. The hidden passage was narrow and claustrophobic, forcing them to move slowly. Lyra's increased security patrols were everywhere, their energy weapons casting eerie shadows. "Vorkarian equipment is proving unreliable," Kale hissed, after their energy rifles jammed during a close encounter with a patrol. "Their weapons aren't made for sustained combat." Mark nodded grimly. "Then we improvise. We use what we have." He pulled a handful of smoke grenades from his pack, a relic from his Marine days. "These will give us cover." He handed Kale a combat knife. "And these will be silent." They moved like ghosts through the palace, relying on stealth and Mark's quick thinking to avoid detection. He remembered his training, every lesson learned in the jungles of Earth, adapting it to the alien environment. Human improvisation against Vorkarian rigidity. As they neared the energy core, Mark overheard 2 guards talking. "Lyra plans to execute the Queen publicly at dawn. It will demoralize the Loyalists." Dawn. The execution was sooner than he thought. They were running out of time. They reached the energy core to find it heavily guarded by Lyra's elite forces. A shimmering energy field blocked the entrance. "We can't get through that," Kale said, her voice tight with frustration. "We need a diversion," Mark replied. "Something big, something that will draw them away." He accessed the palace's internal communication system. "This is a priority 1 emergency," he said, his voice distorted to sound like a palace official. "There is a containment breach in Sector Gamma 9. All security personnel report to Gamma 9 immediately. I repeat, containment breach in Sector Gamma 9. The effect was immediate. Alarms blared and guards began to converge on Sector Gamma 9, leaving the energy core slightly less defended. "That will buy us some time," Mark said. "But not much. Kale, take them. I'm going after Zara." Kale nodded, her face grim. "I will hold them off, but be quick. I do not know how long I can hold them." She charged toward the remaining guards, her energy blade flashing. Mark slipped through the weakened energy field and into the energy core. The air crackled with power. In the center of the room, suspended in a cage of energy, was Zara. She was pale and weak, her usually vibrant crests dimmed. Tubes snaked from her body, draining her life force. He rushed to the cage. Zara, her eyes fluttered open. She focused on him, a faint smile gracing her lips. "Mark, you came. I'm getting you out of here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's too late," she whispered. "I'm too weak." "Don't say that," Mark said, his voice fierce. "I'm not giving up on you." He reached for the controls of the cage, trying to figure out how to release her. "Mark." Zara reached out a trembling hand, touching his face. "I love you." "I love you too," he said, his heart aching. "Now let's get you out of here." He managed to disable the cage, but Zara was barely able to stand. He knew he couldn't leave her here. He scooped her up in his arms, cradling her against his chest. "I've got you," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "I'm not letting you go." He turned to escape, but a figure blocked his path. Vorin, his face twisted with hatred, stood before them, energy weapon raised. "It's over, human," Vorin sneered. "Your little rebellion ends here." "Why, Vorin? Why did you do this?" Zara asked, her voice weak. "Power, Zara," Vorin spat. "You were too weak to rule. Lyra will restore Vorkarian glory, and I will be at her side." "You betrayed your queen," Mark said, his voice cold. "You betrayed your people." "I secured their future," Vorin said. "Now step aside, human, or you will die with her." He raised his weapon. Mark twisted, the draining tendrils scorching the armor on his shoulder as they missed their mark. He dropped into a crouch, the air thick with the metallic tang of ozone and the low hum of the energy core. Vorin roared, a sound that vibrated through the metal floor, and charged. Mark knew he couldn't match Vorin's raw strength. He had to rely on speed, on what Sergeant Miller back on Earth called thinking like a goddamn weasel. He dodged Vorin's clumsy swipe, the Vorkarian's fist impacting the console behind him with enough force to send sparks flying. Mark danced back, feinting left, then right, trying to draw Vorin off balance. "You fight like a scavenger," Vorin bellowed, his golden eyes narrowed. "Zara is weak. She panders to alien sympathies. Lyra will restore the Vorkarian Empire to its former glory." A surge of pain ripped through the room. "Zara." Mark risked a glance. She stood swaying near the central core, her hand outstretched, tendrils of emerald energy arcing from her fingertips to a nearby control panel. The lights flickered violently. "Zara, no," Vorin roared, distracted for a split second. It was all Mark needed. He lunged, driving a fist into Vorin's exposed throat, a pressure point strike he'd learned in close combat training. Vorin staggered back, clutching his neck, gasping for air. Mark followed up with a kick to the knee, buckling Vorin's leg. The larger Vorkarian crashed to the ground, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. Mark stood over him, chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He could finish it, end it now. But something held him back. He saw not just a fanatic, but a soldier, a man who believed he was fighting for his people. Instead of delivering a killing blow, Mark slammed the heel of his hand into another pressure point on Vorin's neck, severing the connection between mind and muscle. Vorin slumped, unconscious. He scooped Zara into his arms. She was light, too light. Her skin felt cold against his. "Hold on," he murmured, pushing past the now inert body of Vorin. The diversion had worked. The few guards remaining were either stunned or too preoccupied with the sparking control panels to notice their escape. They reached the hidden passage, the one Zara had told him about. Kale waited, his face grim. "I've secured an escape route," he said, his voice low, "but we need to move. Lyra's forces will be here soon." They hurried through the narrow passage, the rough stone scraping against Mark's armor. The tunnel twisted and turned, descending deeper into the bowels of the palace. Suddenly, Zara gasped and went limp in Mark's arms. "Zara!" He knelt, cradling her. Her breathing was shallow, ragged. Her emerald skin had dulled, losing its vibrant glow. "She's fading," Kale said, his voice tight with concern. "We need to get her to the rebel base." They pressed on, their pace frantic, but Zara's condition worsened with every step. Finally, she collapsed completely, her body unresponsive. Kale led them through a final, crumbling archway into a vast cavern. Torches flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the damp stone walls. This was it, the rebel base hidden deep within the Vorkarian catacombs. A Vorkarian woman in simple, unadorned armor rushed forward. She wore a medic symbol on her arm. "Bring her here," she said, her voice calm and professional. "I'm Lyra." Not the power-hungry Lyra Mark realized, but a medic. Another pawn in this deadly game. Lyra examined Zara, her brow furrowed. "She's been drained of her royal life force. It's serious. Can you help her?" Mark asked, his voice desperate. "There's one thing that might work," Lyra said, her gaze meeting Mark's. "A Vorkarian energy crystal. It can replenish her life force, but what?" "The only crystal strong enough is located in a remote Vorkarian temple," Lyra said, her voice grave. "Now under Lyra's control, it's heavily guarded." Mark didn't hesitate. "I'll get it." Kale stepped forward, his hand on Mark's arm. "It's suicide, human. That temple is a fortress." "I don't care," Mark said, his voice firm. "I have to try." He turned to Lyra. "What do you know about the temple?" Lyra explained that the temple was built centuries ago to harness geothermal energy. It was heavily fortified with multiple layers of defenses and a large contingent of Lyra's troops. "We have a contact within the temple," Lyra added, "but he's unreliable, a double agent at best." Zara stirred, her eyelids fluttering. She looked at Mark, her golden eyes filled with pain and concern. "Mark," she whispered, her voice weak, "be careful, the temple, the lower levels, the defenses, they resonate with sonic frequencies. Humans are more susceptible." Her eyes closed again and she drifted back into unconsciousness. Mark knelt beside her, taking her hand. "I'll be careful," he promised, his voice choked with emotion. He didn't know if he would ever see her again. He stood, his face grim. He turned to Kale. "I need a plan," he said, "and I need your help." Kale nodded, his expression resolute. "You have it, human. You have more courage than any Vorkarian I know. Let's get you ready." The Vorkarian temple loomed against the alien night sky, a jagged silhouette of obsidian and shimmering energy conduits. A cold wind whistled through the narrow canyons between its spires, carrying the metallic tang of ozone. Mark and Kale moved with practiced silence, their boots muffled by the porous stone pathway leading toward a shadowed alcove, the secret entrance known only to the resistance. The first layer of security materialized as a low hum growing steadily louder. Vorkarian sentry drones, shaped like iridescent beetles, patrolled the perimeter, their multifaceted eyes scanning for intruders. Beams of crimson light sliced through the darkness, painting fleeting patterns on the temple walls. "Here," Mark whispered, handing Kale a small, palm-sized device. "Human tech adapted, cloaking field should keep us off their sensors." The device, cobbled together from salvaged Vorkarian components and Mark's own ingenuity, emitted a faint shimmer, bending the light around them. Kale nodded, his mandibles clicking softly. "I can reroute one of the drone patrols, distract them." He tapped a sequence on his wrist-mounted datapad, his multifaceted eyes glowing with concentration. A moment later, one of the drones abruptly changed course, veering sharply toward a ventilation shaft on the temple's western flank. "Ventilation system. They'll be busy for a while." They slipped through the alcove, entering the temple's cool, silent interior. The air hung heavy with the scent of incense and something else, something ancient and metallic. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the temple's power systems. They moved cautiously through a series of antechambers, their footsteps echoing eerily in the vast, empty space. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in the crimson robes of a temple guard. "You made it," she hissed, her voice tight with nerves. "I am Rena. I'm your contact." She was young, even for a Vorkarian, her pale blue skin marred by a network of stress lines. Her eyes darted nervously, avoiding Mark's gaze. Rena handed Mark a crudely drawn map of the temple. "This will show you the way to the crystal chamber. The energy crystal is kept there." Her voice trembled slightly. "But be warned, things have changed since I last saw a map. Lyra has installed a new security system. What kind of system? Mark asked, his hand instinctively moving to the sidearm concealed beneath his jacket. Energy sensors, Rena explained, her voice barely a whisper. They detect foreign life forms. Anything that doesn't belong here will trigger an alarm. Mark frowned. That complicates things. He pulled out the cloaking device again, examining it closely. I might be able to modify this, recalibrate the frequency to mask our energy signatures. He worked quickly, using a small multi-tool to adjust the device's internal components. Human ingenuity at its finest, he muttered, more to himself than to the others. As they proceeded deeper into the temple, a group of loyalist temple guards rounded a corner, their energy rifles raised. Intruders! One of them shouted, his voice echoing through the halls. The firefight was brief and brutal. Mark and Kale moved with speed and precision, using the shadows as cover. Mark took down 2 guards with well-aimed shots from his sidearm, while Kale used his superior strength to overpower another, disarming him and smashing his head against a stone pillar. Rena, caught in the crossfire, screamed and ducked behind a pillar. "It's too dangerous," she cried. "We have to abandon the mission." Mark glanced at her, his eyes narrowed. "What's wrong, Rena?" "You seem awfully eager to give up." She wrung her hands, her mandibles clicking nervously. I can't do this. Lyra knows you're here. She set a trap for you." "A trap?" Mark asked, his voice hardening. "How do you know that?" Rena hesitated, her eyes filled with fear. She threatened my family. She said if I didn't cooperate, she would." Her voice trailed off. "She knew you would come for Thane, Ustal, and she used me to lure you in." Despite the danger, Mark's determination hardened. "I'm not turning back now. Zara needs that crystal." He turned to Kale. "Stay here with Rena. I don't trust her. She might be a liability." Kale nodded, his expression grim. "Be careful, Mark." Mark proceeded alone, navigating a series of laser grids and pressure plates. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he carefully sidestepped the deadly beams and tiptoed across the sensitive tiles. The air grew thick with anticipation. As he neared the crystal chamber, he noticed a faint energy signature, a subtle vibration in the air that shouldn't be there. Someone else was already inside. He pushed open the heavy stone doors and stepped into the chamber. Lyra stood waiting for him, the energy crystal glowing softly in her hand. A dozen elite guards surrounded her, their weapons trained on Mark. "Welcome, Mark Clark," Lyra said, her voice dripping with malice. "I knew you would come. Rena was simply bait, and now you have walked right into my trap." The throne. Lyra's violet eyes burned with a zeal Mark found deeply unsettling. She clutched the energy crystal, its facets casting fractured light across her face, painting her expression in alternating shades of tenacity and something close to mania. "Zara is weak, blinded by sentimentality. She's leading us to ruin. I will restore the Vorkarian Empire to its former glory." Mark studied her, his marine training kicking in, analyzing her posture, her breathing, the subtle tremors in her hand that held the crystal. "And you think risking the rite of ascension, challenging her directly, is the way to do that?" "It is the only way," Lyra snapped, her grip tightening on the crystal. "Zara refuses to see the truth. She clings to outdated traditions, ignores the whispers of discontent. The nobles, many of them see it. They understand the need for a strong hand. They communicate with me in secret, offering their support." Mark frowned. "Dissident nobles, you're planning a coup?" Lyra scoffed. "A restoration, not a coup. I am merely answering the call of my people." "This crystal," she held it aloft, the energy within pulsing brighter, "will amplify my psychic abilities, granting me the strength to overcome Zara's resistance. It will allow me to reach the deepest parts of the Vorkarian consciousness and show them that I am the true leader." Mark noticed the way the crystal's light flickered erratically, the subtle hum that vibrated through the air. "That crystal, it doesn't look stable, the energy's all over the place. Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Lyra's mind focused. "Of course I do. This power is a necessary sacrifice to save the Vorkarian people. a small price to pay for the Empire's salvation. Sacrifice. You're talking about playing with forces you clearly don't understand. What about safeguards? What about the potential for feedback? Mark took a step closer, his voice low and urgent. Lyra, this could be dangerous, not just for you, but for everyone here. Lyra's patience snapped. Silence, human. You know nothing of Vorkarian destiny. You are a pawn in a game you cannot comprehend. She gestured sharply. Seize him. The two guards flanking her moved forward, their energy rifles humming to life. Mark didn't hesitate. Years of combat had ingrained in him a simple principle. When diplomacy fails, improvise. He reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small, metallic sphere, a flashbang grenade he'd managed to smuggle from his ship. He yanked the pin and tossed it at the guard's feet. The temple erupted in a blinding flash of light and a deafening roar. The guards staggered back, momentarily disoriented, their multifaceted eyes struggling to adjust. Mark used the chaos to his advantage, diving behind a massive stone pillar. He scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. He needed to get out of here and fast. He remembered the energy dampener's small devices that had been preventing him from using his modified cloaking device. He located the control panel near the entrance and, with a few swift keystrokes, disabled the field. The air shimmered slightly as the dampeners deactivated. Mark activated his cloaking device, the familiar tingle spreading across his skin as he blended into the shadows. He was no longer visible to the naked eye, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. He thinks he can hide. Lyra's voice, amplified by the temple's acoustics, echoed through the chamber. Activate the sensor grid. A network of energy beams flickered into existence, crisscrossing the temple in a complex web. Mark felt a prickling sensation as the sensors swept over him, detecting the faint energy signature of his modified cloaking device. There, Lyra pointed, her eyes narrowed. He's near the west wall, Mark cursed silently. The Vorkarian technology was more advanced than he'd anticipated. He needed to find another way to evade them. He scanned the temple, his eyes searching for an escape route. The architecture was ancient and complex, a labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and hidden passages. He had to use it to his advantage. He moved quickly and unpredictably, darting between pillars, scaling walls, using the shadows to conceal his movements. The sensor grid followed him relentlessly, its energy beams tracing his every step. Lyra's frustration was palpable. He's more resourceful than I anticipated, she snarled. Increase the sensor sensitivity. I want him cornered. Mark pressed himself against a cold stone wall, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed a way out, a way to break free from this deadly game of cat and mouse. Then he saw a small, almost imperceptible gap in the sensor grid, a blind spot near an ancient ventilation shaft. It was a long shot, but it was his only chance. He ripped a strip of cloth from his tunic and quickly fashioned a makeshift rope. He attached one end to a nearby gargoyle and swung out across the chamber, narrowly avoiding the sensor beams. He landed with a thud near the ventilation shaft and disappeared inside. After him, Lyra shrieked, "Find him, kill him." The guards hesitated, glancing nervously at the narrow, dark opening of the ventilation shaft. The space was cramped, dangerous, and likely filled with unseen hazards. Lyra, consumed by anger, stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "Fools, do you question my orders?" She raised the energy crystal, its power surging uncontrollably. "I'll flush him out myself." The temple began to shake, the ancient stones groaning under the strain of the crystal's power. Alarms blared, their piercing wails echoing through the chamber. Mark scrambled through the ventilation shaft, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. He could feel the energy building behind him, the air crackling with raw power. He had to get out of here now. He spotted a hidden exit, a small, camouflaged door that led to the outside. He wrenched it open and tumbled out into the night air, just as a blinding blast of energy erupted from the ventilation shaft behind him. He hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. his body aching. He looked back at the temple, its silhouette illuminated by the eerie glow of the energy crystal. The crystal was overloading, threatening to destroy the entire structure. He realized then that Lyra's plan wasn't just about seizing power. It was about destroying Zara, destroying anyone who stood in her way, regardless of the cost. She was willing to sacrifice everything, even the temple itself, to achieve her twisted vision. The jagged shard of crystal, ripped from the temple wall during his escape, dug deeper into Mark's side with each stride. The air hung thick and humid, smelling of ozone and something akin to overripe fruit. Vorkarian flora, bioluminescent and unsettling, pulsed with an alien rhythm around him. He kept low, his marine training kicking in, using the strange, towering fungi for cover. The iridescent leaves, slick with moisture, brushed against his skin, leaving a tingling sensation. He knew Lyra wouldn't waste time. Her patrols would be scouring the area. He needed to contact Zara. He remembered the communications bay on Lyra's ship. During his brief captivity, he'd noticed a rarely used, heavily encrypted frequency, likely a legacy system for contacting remote outposts. He'd managed to memorize the modulation sequence while pretending to examine a damaged console. Now, he just needed to find a relatively shielded location. He found a small cave, its entrance almost entirely concealed by a curtain of phosphorescent vines. He pulled out the modified Vorkarian datapad he'd managed to snag, its screen cracked but functional from a fallen guard, rerouted its power supply and began transmitting. The coded message, a string of prime numbers interspersed with Vorkarian glyphs, pulsed into the ether. Zara, immediate contact, urgent, temple compromised, LZ-47 secure. In the heart of the royal citadel, Zara stood before a holographic display, reviewing troop deployments. Her silver eyes, normally sharp and unwavering, were clouded with concern. The news of the temple activation, followed by its sudden silence, had shaken her. A chime, low and insistent, broke through the sterile hum of the command center. "Anomalous transmission detected, Your Majesty," a communications officer reported, his voice tinged with alarm. "Encrypted signal on a restricted frequency. Origin, surface zone near the temple." Zara's hand tightened on the control panel. "Source identification. Impossible to pinpoint precisely, Your Majesty. The signal is fragmented, almost ghost-like, but the encryption. It matches a legacy Vorkarian system, one rarely used." Suspicion hardened her features. A trap, it had to be. "Analyze the signal," she commanded. "Attempt decryption, but maintain full security protocols. I want no unauthorized access." "Your Majesty, I have run a biometric scan against the signal's unique signature. The readings match the human male Mark Clark." Zara's breath caught in her throat. Impossible, but the Citadel's systems were infallible. "Display the scan results." The data scrolled across the holographic screen, physiological markers, genetic sequences, all aligning with the information gathered during Mark's initial examination. It was him, but why, and could she trust him? The rendezvous point was a desolate plateau, scarred by ancient lava flows. Zara arrived in a cloaked transport, flanked by a contingent of her most trusted guards. Mark waited, standing near a jagged rock formation, his posture tense but resolute. As Zara approached, her guards raised their plasma rifles, but she waved them down. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice echoing across the barren landscape. She stopped a few feet from Mark, her expression unreadable. "You have something to tell me, human." Mark winced as he straightened, favoring his injured side. "Lyra plans to seize power. She's using the energy crystal from the temple. It can amplify psychic abilities, create illusions even." He hesitated cause widespread destruction. Zara's eyes narrowed. Lyra would never. But even as she spoke, doubt gnawed at her. Her cousin had always been ambitious, driven by a thirst for power. Mark met her gaze, his own unwavering. "She's been communicating with the dissident nobles. They're backing her." I accessed the temple's security system and downloaded their communication logs. I was able to get the files because the cloaking device I was wearing scrambled the signal. He held out a data chip. Zara took the chip, her fingers brushing against his. A flicker of something passed between them, quickly suppressed. She inserted the chip into a reader on her wrist gauntlet. The screen displayed encrypted messages, names, dates, all confirming Mark's allegations. Rage flared in Zara's eyes, betrayal from her own cousin. Lyra, how could she? She struggled to reconcile the image of the cousin she had known with the ruthless schemer revealed in the data. This could fracture the Empire, civil war. Mark stepped closer. It doesn't have to. There's another way, a human way. He paused, choosing his words carefully. De-escalation, negotiation, exposing her conspiracy, not crushing her rebellion. Zara stared at him, skepticism warring with a flicker of hope. A human approach in this situation, you believe that will work? It's worth trying, Mark insisted. Violence only breeds more violence. We need to find a way to disarm her, not destroy her. Zara turned away, her gaze sweeping across the desolate landscape. The weight of her crown, the responsibility for her people pressed down on her. I will consider your unorthodox proposal, but first the crystal must be secured. It is too dangerous in Lyra's hands. She turned back to her guards. Commander Vrax will lead a team to retrieve the crystal from the temple. He is to use extreme discretion, no unnecessary force. Lyra stood in the heart of the temple, the energy crystal pulsing with raw power in her hands. The ancient symbols carved into the walls glowed with an eerie light, resonating with her own amplified psychic abilities. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind, anticipating Zara's next move. Vrax, loyal, predictable Vrax. She knew exactly when and where he would strike. Prepare the trap, she commanded, her voice echoing through the cavernous chamber. Let Zara send her lapdogs. They will learn the true meaning of power. Commander Vrax, a hulking Vorkarian warrior with cybernetic implants glinting beneath his armor, led his team through the winding tunnels of the temple. He trusted Zara's orders, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. This felt too easy. The temple should have been swarming with Lyra's forces. Instead, silence. Suddenly, the tunnel ahead shimmered, distorting the light. A wall of psychic energy slammed into the team, throwing them off their feet. Plasma fire erupted from the shadows, cutting down several guards before they could react. Ambush! Vrax roared, scrambling for cover. He activated his energy shield, deflecting a barrage of plasma bolts. But the illusions were disorienting. His team was firing at shadows, at figments of their own fears. Lyra was toying with them, using the crystal to amplify their anxieties, turning them against each other. Vrax fought his way forward, his cybernetic arm humming with power. He saw Lyra, standing at the far end of the tunnel, the crystal glowing in her hand. Her eyes burned with an unholy light. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a wave of psychic energy slammed into him, tearing through his shields, ripping through his mind. He felt his consciousness fragmenting, his memories dissolving. He staggered, clutching his head, but managed to activate his comms. Zara, trap, Lyra, power, amplified. Then, darkness. Back in the Citadel, Zara stood before the holographic display, monitoring Vrax's progress. Suddenly, the screen flickered, then filled with static. A garbled message, barely audible, crackled through the speakers. Zara, trap, Lyra, power. Then silence. Zara's blood ran cold. Vrax, respond. Only static answered her. A moment later, a new signal blared across the Citadel's comms system. A broadcast originating from the temple, amplified to reach every corner of the Vorkarian Empire. Lyra's image filled the screen, her eyes blazing with manic energy. People of Vorkaria, she declared, her voice ringing with power. Your queen is weak, indecisive. She has allowed a human to infiltrate our ranks, to poison her mind. I, Lyra, have seized the energy crystal. I will use its power to restore Vorkaria to its former glory. I challenge Zara for the throne. Let the strongest rule. In the royal citadel, Zara stared at the screen, her face pale, her hands trembling. Rebellion, open defiance. She had underestimated Lyra, underestimated the depth of her ambition, the extent of her power. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Mark, he looked at her, his eyes filled with concern. Zara. Zara turned away, her voice barely a whisper. It is over, I have failed. Mark stepped in front of her, blocking her path. He took her hands in his touch firm and reassuring. It's not over, Zara. Not while we're together. We can fix this. We will fix this. Lyra, empowered by the energy crystal, projected her psychic influence across Vorkarian cities. Her image, amplified tenfold, filled every public screen, every private viewer. People of Vorka, her voice boomed, resonating with an unnatural calm. I bring you prosperity. I bring you order. I bring you the strength to reclaim our rightful place in the galaxy. The broadcast showed gleaming cities, fertile fields, and triumphant Vorkarian warriors. It was a vision of a future bought with the crystal's power, a future where Vorka reigned supreme. Zara watched the broadcast from her war room, a knot forming in her stomach. The promises, though blatant, were resonating. She could see it in the faces of her advisors, in the subtle shifts in their posture. War-weary and desperate, the populace was ripe for such manipulation. Mark, standing beside her, frowned. It's subtle but effective, he observed, tapping a finger against his chin. She's using layered suggestion, playing on their fears and aspirations. We used similar techniques back on Earth, though we called it advertising sometimes. Advertising. Zara tilted her head, her violet eyes narrowing. Is this some form of deception? It's about controlling the narrative, Mark explained, framing the situation in a way that benefits her. She's promising them everything they want without mentioning the cost. He pointed to a section of the broadcast where Lyra subtly demonized those who opposed her. See that? She's creating an us versus them mentality, making it easier to justify her actions. We must counteract this, Zara stated, her voice firm. We will issue a decree denouncing her lies. Mark shook his head. That won't be enough. You need to fight fire with fire. Zara recoiled. Engage in such dishonorable tactics. It is beneath Vorkarian dignity. Dignity won't win this war, Zara, Mark countered, his voice urgent. Lyra's already controlling the narrative. If you don't fight back, you'll lose before the first shot is fired. He gestured to the screens showing Lyra's broadcast. She's using their hopes against them. You need to show them the truth. Zara hesitated, her internal conflict evident. The idea of stooping to Lyra's level was repugnant, but Mark's logic was undeniable. The fate of Vorka hung in the balance. Very well, she conceded, her voice permeated with reluctance. Implement your plan, Mark, but I will not tolerate outright falsehoods. Within hours, Zara's loyalist scientists, technicians, communications specialists were working under Mark's direction, transforming the war room into a counter-propaganda hub. Vorkarian technology, repurposed with human ingenuity, hummed with newfound purpose. Mark's broadcasts, utilizing the same channels as Lyra's, took a different approach. He didn't promise prosperity or order. Instead, he presented data, historical records of energy crystal misuse, scientific analyses of its instability, simulations of its long-term effects on Vorka's ecosystem. He spoke of radiation poisoning, resource depletion, and the potential for catastrophic energy surges. Lyra, detecting Mark's counter-propaganda, unleashed a wave of jamming signals, attempting to silence his broadcasts. But Mark had anticipated this. Redundant broadcast systems, scattered across the planet, kicked in, ensuring that his message continued to reach the Vorkarian people. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Doubts crept into the minds of Lyra's followers. Questions were asked. Dissent simmered beneath the surface. The war-weary populace, initially seduced by Lyra's promises, began to see the potential dangers of her rule. Lyra, enraged by Mark's interference, issued a direct order. Locate the human, eliminate him. He is a threat to Vorka's destiny. Zara, informed of the threat to Mark's life, summoned Commander Rel, a skilled warrior known for her unwavering loyalty. "Protect Mark Clark," she commanded, her voice brooking no argument. "His safety is paramount." This order, spoken with such conviction, spoke volumes about Zara's increasing trust and perhaps something more towards the human. Mark and Rel, an unlikely duo, worked together to evade Lyra's patrols. They moved from one secure location to another, utilizing hidden tunnels, abandoned research facilities, and the vast network of Vorkarian infrastructure. Rel's knowledge of the terrain and her combat skills were invaluable, while Mark's quick thinking and his ability to anticipate Lyra's moves kept them one step ahead. During their flight, Mark discovered something alarming. Lyra wasn't just using the energy crystal to project her influence. She was siphoning power from the entire Vorkarian grid, diverting it to amplify the crystal's energy output. Widespread blackouts plagued the cities. Resource shortages became increasingly common. The promise of prosperity was turning into a reality of deprivation. "She's bleeding the planet dry," Mark realized, his voice grim. "If she keeps this up, there won't be anything left." He proposed a daring plan: to infiltrate the main power station and disrupt Lyra's energy siphon, using his knowledge of human engineering principles to exploit a vulnerability in the Vorkarian power grid. Zara, after listening to Mark's explanation and reviewing his schematics, authorized the plan. "You have my full support, Mark," she said, her violet eyes filled with a newfound drive. "I trust your judgment. Do what you must to stop Lyra." She provided him with access to the necessary resources and personnel, a clear indication of her complete faith in his abilities. Mark and Rel, armed with specialized equipment and a handful of loyal soldiers, infiltrated the main power station, a sprawling complex of shimmering metal and pulsating energy conduits. They faced resistance from Lyra's security forces, heavily armed warriors clad in gleaming armor. A tense and dangerous confrontation ensued, lasers blazing, energy shields flickering, and the air thick with the smell of ozone. During the infiltration, Rel was captured, ambushed by a group of Lyra's elite guards. Zara was immediately notified. Her face hardened with concern and a hint of something that looked suspiciously like anger. Mark, with Rel captured and time running out, pressed on, deeper into the power station's core. He navigated the labyrinthine corridors, dodging security drones and disabling energy barriers, his mind racing, his body fueled by adrenaline. He finally reached the central control room, the heart of Lyra's energy siphon. But as he analyzed the energy flow, he discovered something far more terrifying than he could have imagined. Lyra wasn't just siphoning energy. She was unknowingly destabilizing the Vorkarian sun with her use of the crystal. Its delicate equilibrium, maintained for millennia, was on the verge of collapse. A civilization-ending threat loomed, far greater than anything they had previously faced. Mark barely registered the closing of the door. The holographic schematics of the Vorkarian sun swam before his eyes, overlaid with complex equations he scribbled furiously on a discarded datapad. The air in the lab thrummed with the terrifying energy of the crystal, a low, almost subliminal vibration against his skin. He muttered to himself, "Gravitational anomalies, solar flare frequency, energy output variance. Damn it, it's all over the place." The door hissed open again, and this time it was Vorkarian scientists filing in, their faces grim. Chief Scientist Goran, his iridescent scales dulled with worry, approached Mark. "Captain Clark, our simulations confirm your projections. The crystal's energy signature is causing unpredictable solar flares, and we are detecting gravitational shifts within the star's core." Mark pushed a hand through his already disheveled hair. "So, we're talking about a runaway reaction. How long before it destabilizes completely?" Goran exchanged a look with the other scientists. "At the current rate, days. possibly less. A complete shutdown of the energy grid is the only viable solution. Mark swore under his breath. That would cripple Vorka. No power, no communications, no shields. Lyra would crush you. Zara's voice cut through the tension. Then we find another way. She entered the lab, her regal bearing a stark contrast to the chaotic scene. There is no other way, Zara, Mark said, his voice tight with frustration. The sun is going to explode, you have to shut it down. I will not leave my people defenseless, she retorted, her eyes flashing. We are at war, Mark. We cannot simply surrender. This isn't surrendering, it's surviving. He hit his fist on the datapad, the gesture silencing the scientists. What good is winning a war if you don't have a planet to win it on? Zara's teeth clenched. You do not understand the sacrifices necessary for victory, and you don't understand the science. Mark shot back, regretting the harshness of his tone. This isn't some political game, Zara. This is physics, and physics doesn't care about your war. Zara turned away, her shoulders rigid. I have a planet to run, Captain Clark. I trust you will continue to seek alternatives. Later that cycle, shrouded in an almost theatrical secrecy, Zara briefed a small, elite team of Valkyrian warriors in a darkened hangar. The sleek, black assault ship shimmered under the dim red lights. Rel is still alive, she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Lyra holds him somewhere within her stronghold. He must be rescued. Your Majesty, this is reckless, Commander Varkos protested. Lyra's defenses are impenetrable. We risk losing valuable resources. His life is worth the risk, Zara countered, her gaze unwavering. I will not abandon him. The team boarded the ship, silently gliding out of the hangar and into the inky blackness of space. Hours later, a transmission crackled across Zara's comms. We breached the outer defenses, Your Majesty, but Rel is not here. He's been moved. Unknown location. Zara closed her eyes, a wave of despair washing over her. Return to base, she ordered, her voice barely a whisper. We have failed. The failure was compounded by Lyra's next move. A broadcast filled every Vorkarian comm channel, a distorted image of Rel flickering on the screen. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. Zara, he said, his voice strained. She cares more for her human pet than for her own people. She is neglecting our defenses, weakening our empire. Do not trust her. The broadcast cut off, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Zara watched the faces of her advisors, their expressions a mixture of doubt and suspicion. Mark, watching the replay of the broadcast in Zara's war room, felt a surge of anger. That's manipulation. He's being forced to say those things. He turned to Zara. We have to do something. We have to shut down the grid. I told you I cannot, Zara replied, her voice weary. Then let me try something else, Mark said, his mind racing. A phased energy reduction. We gradually decrease the output sector by sector, giving people time to adapt. It won't be as effective as a full shutdown, but it'll buy us time. Zara considered his proposal, her brow furrowed. It is risky. The instability could worsen with each reduction. It's better than doing nothing, Mark pressed. Please, Zara, let me try. Zara finally relented. Very well, prepare your plan. But know this, Captain Clark, if this fails, the consequences will be dire. Days blurred into a frenzy of activity as Mark worked with the Vorkarian engineers to implement his plan. He felt a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach as the first phase of the energy reduction began. Across Vorka, lights flickered and died, machines sputtered to a halt, and the hum of the energy grid faded into an unsettling silence. The news feeds exploded with reports of blackouts, traffic gridlocks, and widespread unrest. Lyra's propaganda machine went into overdrive, amplifying the chaos and blaming Zara for the suffering of her people. Then came the attack. Coordinated strikes against key infrastructure points, power stations, communication hubs, shield generators plunged entire sectors into darkness. The Vorkarian military scrambled to respond, but they were too late. Lyra's forces were already seizing control. Mark, watching the unfolding chaos on the holographic display, felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just opportunistic, he said, his voice low. This was planned. They knew exactly where to strike. Zara's eyes narrowed. A coordinated attack of this magnitude requires inside knowledge. There must be a mole within my inner circle. The realization hung in the air, thick with suspicion and paranoia. Zara looked at her advisors, her gaze searching. Who? The question echoed in Mark's mind. Who could betray Zara? Who would risk the destruction of their own planet for personal gain? He trusted no one. Zara, already burdened by the weight of her responsibilities, now had to contend with the knowledge that she was surrounded by traitors. She turned to Mark, her eyes filled with a deep, unspoken question. Did she make the right choice, trusting him? Just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, Mark stumbled upon another horrifying discovery. Analyzing the energy signatures emitted by the crystal, he found something far more sinister than solar instability. Zara, he said, his voice trembling, the crystal. It's emitting a unique form of radiation. It's accelerating Vorkarian genetic decay. Before Zara could respond, a message flashed across the screen. It was from Lyra. A distorted image of Rel filled the screen, his face bruised and bloodied. Zara, Lyra's voice echoed, cold and cruel, capitulate. Surrender your throne and your human pet, or Rel will be executed for treason at dawn. Zara stared at the screen, her face a mask of anguish. What do we do, Mark? They sat in silence for a long time, the weight of their decisions pressing down on them. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice soft but firm. Is this war worth it, Zara? Is it worth the health of your people? Is it worth the destruction of your son? Mark studied the complex patterns on his datapad once more, muttering to himself. Then his eyes widened. It's not just that the sun is in danger, but that the Vorkarian people are as well. The crystal radiation is damaging them on a genetic level. He paused, thinking back to his initial blood samples from when he was first brought on board. Wait a minute. What is it, Mark? Zara asked. Human DNA, he said, his voice filled with a newfound hope. It's different. It's not being affected by the radiation. In fact, it could be adapted to repair the damaged Vorkarian DNA. He looked at Zara, his eyes shining with excitement. This is it, Zara. This is our future, one way or another. A retrovirus, Mark continued, leaning forward in the sterile lab, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Artificially synthesized, carrying my modified human genetic code. It could repair the damaged Vorkarian DNA at a cellular level, reversing the decay. Zara absorbed his words, her expression a mask of careful consideration. The holographic displays around them pulsed with complex genetic sequences, a testament to the Vorkarian understanding of life's building blocks. Theoretically possible, she conceded, but the artificial synthesis of such a complex retrovirus, specifically tailored to the Vorkarian genome, the potential for unforeseen consequences is significant. A week later, in the vast, echoing chamber of the Royal Research Facility, Zara stood before her assembled science team. Dr. Hax, she addressed the lead geneticist, a tall Vorkarian with skin the color of polished obsidian. What is your assessment? Hax bowed his head. Your Majesty, while the human's proposal possesses a certain audacity, the risks are substantial. The Vorkarian genome is far more intricate than that of Homo sapiens. Artificial manipulation on this scale carries a high probability of failure, or worse, unintended mutations. Another scientist, Liza, spoke up, her voice filled with concern. The retrovirus could trigger unpredictable immune responses, accelerate the decay instead of reversing it, or even create new, more virulent genetic defects. Zara's gaze swept across their faces, noting their apprehension. I understand your concerns, she said, her voice firm, but we are facing extinction. We must consider every option, however risky. She paused, her gaze hardening. Proceed with the synthesis, but exercise extreme caution. News of the genetic experiment quickly spread throughout the Vorkarian court, fueling the fires of political dissent. Lyra, Zara's most vocal opponent, seized the opportunity. "The Queen is gambling with our very existence," she declared in a clandestine meeting with her supporters. "She is placing her faith in a primitive human and his untested science. This is madness." Mark, oblivious to the political storm brewing around him, was focused solely on the science. "The retroviral vector is almost complete," he announced to Zara, his face flushed with excitement. "We're ready for the first test run." Zara's brow furrowed. The protocols require extensive simulations and in vitro testing before any live subject is considered. Mark shook his head, his eyebrows furrowed. "Simulations can only tell us so much. We need to see how it interacts with living tissue with a functioning immune system. I volunteer." Zara's eyes widened in alarm. "Absolutely not. The risks are too great. I will not allow you to endanger yourself." "Zara," Mark said, his voice softening, "this is my idea. I understand the risks better than anyone, and if it works, it could save your people. Please trust me." Zara stared into his earnest eyes, seeing the depth of his commitment and the unwavering belief in his science. "Very well," she conceded, her voice barely a whisper. "But I will be there every step of the way." The injection was administered in a sterile isolation chamber, the air thick with anticipation. A Vorkarian medic, his face impassive, inserted the needle into Mark's arm, injecting the retroviral solution. Mark winced, a wave of heat spreading through his veins. Zara watched from behind a reinforced glass window, her heart pounding in her chest. The monitoring equipment around Mark beeped and whirred, tracking his vital signs. The hours that followed were agonizing. Mark experienced intense fluctuations in body temperature, muscle spasms, and periods of delirium. Zara remained by his side, never leaving his sight, her worry etched on her face. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the initial test results came back. Dr. Hax rushed into the observation room, his face alight with excitement. "Your Majesty," he announced, "the retrovirus is integrating. It is successfully inserting itself into the human's DNA, rewriting the genetic code as intended." A wave of relief washed over Zara, her knees almost buckling beneath her. "Incredible," she breathed, her eyes fixed on Mark's still form. "Truly incredible." While Mark recovered, the Vorkarian scientists worked tirelessly to develop a Vorkarian-compatible version of the retrovirus. The task proved to be far more challenging than anticipated, the subtle differences in genetic structure presenting a significant hurdle. Adding to the difficulties, sabotage began to plague the research facility. Equipment malfunctioned, data files were corrupted, and vital reagents went missing. It became clear that someone within Zara's inner circle was actively working against her. Amidst the scientific turmoil, Zara received a coded message from a loyalist within Lyra's ranks. Rel's execution was imminent. Zara's breath hitched. Rel, her childhood friend and former military commander, had been captured by Lyra's forces weeks ago. She had hoped to negotiate his release, but Lyra was clearly losing patience. Torn between her duty to find a genetic solution for her people and her loyalty to a friend, Zara made a difficult decision. She would attempt a covert rescue operation, even if it meant risking everything. While Mark was still recovering from the retrovirus injection, Zara secretly assembled a small team of her most trusted soldiers. She excluded anyone she suspected of being a mole, carefully selecting individuals known for their unwavering loyalty and combat skills. Under the cover of darkness, Zara and her team infiltrated Lyra's stronghold, a heavily fortified complex nestled deep within the Vorkarian mountains. They moved with stealth and precision, disabling security systems and evading patrols. Finally, they reached Rel's cell, but what they found inside was not the defiant warrior they expected. Rel was gaunt and listless, his eyes vacant. A thin cable snaked from the base of his skull, disappearing into a neural implant. "Rel," Zara said, her voice filled with concern. Rel turned to face her, his expression blank. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice monotone and devoid of emotion. "I have been expecting you." Before Zara could react, Rel lunged at her, his movements swift and deadly. He was no longer the friend she knew. He was a puppet, controlled by Lyra through the neural implant. Zara was forced to defend herself, her heart aching as she fought against her former comrade. Rel, though physically weakened, was relentless, his attacks precise and calculated. "Rel, stop," Zara pleaded, parrying his blows. "This isn't you." But Rel was beyond reason, his mind completely under Lyra's control. With a heavy heart, Zara disabled him with a precise strike to his pressure point, knocking him unconscious. As Zara's team prepared to extract Rel, alarms blared throughout the complex. They were ambushed by Lyra's forces, caught in a crossfire of laser fire and plasma grenades. The rescue team fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Several soldiers fell, their bodies riddled with energy burns. Zara, despite her injuries, led the retreat, dragging Rel's unconscious body behind her. They managed to escape the stronghold, but the cost was high. The rescue attempt had failed. Rel was still under Lyra's control, and Zara's team had suffered heavy casualties. They were forced to leave without removing the neural implant. To add insult to injury, Lyra broadcasted a recording of Zara attacking Rel, edited to make it appear as though Zara had initiated the assault. The recording was widely circulated, further damaging Zara's reputation and fueling the perception that she was unstable and unfit to rule. Meanwhile, Mark, slowly recovering from the retrovirus injection, learned of Zara's rescue attempt and her injuries. He clenched his fists, his anger simmering beneath the surface. He felt a surge of protectiveness towards Zara, a fierce dedication to protect her from her enemies. Exhausted and injured, Zara returned to the royal palace, only to discover that the Vorkarian-compatible retrovirus had been stolen from the lab. Zara and Mark stood together in the ransacked laboratory, their faces grim. The holographic displays were shattered, equipment was overturned, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt circuits. "The theft of the retrovirus," Mark said, his voice tight with anger, "and the failed rescue attempt. They're connected. This was a coordinated plan." Zara nodded, her eyes narrowed. "Lyra is behind this, but she didn't act alone. She had help, someone on the inside." As Zara reviewed the security logs and communication records, a disturbing pattern emerged. One name appeared repeatedly: Vorn, her most trusted advisor, the one who had stood by her side through countless crises. His communications were encrypted, but the frequency and timing were undeniable. Zara stared at the evidence, her heart sinking. Vorn, the man she had trusted implicitly, had betrayed her. He had been secretly communicating with Lyra, providing her with inside information and sabotaging her efforts. The realization hit her like a physical blow, leaving her reeling with shock and disbelief. Her closest confidant, her most loyal ally, was the enemy. Zara stormed into Vorn's chamber, the metallic tang of ozone heavy in the air. The sterile white walls seemed to amplify her fury. Vorn stood calmly amidst a cluster of data streams, his multifaceted eyes betraying no hint of remorse. "You," she spat, her voice resonating with suppressed rage. "How could you?" Vorn turned slowly, his expression almost clinical. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice a low hum, "I acted in the best interests of the Vorkarian people. Your attachment to this human, these genetic experiments, they weaken us. We are becoming deluded." "Deluded?" Zara scoffed. "You steal a retrovirus, a potential cure, and modify it to what exactly?" Vorn's gaze sharpened. "Lyra understands the true threat. She intends to use it, selectively, to ensure that those Vorkarians tainted by human genetics do not further pollute the bloodline." A chill ran down Zara's spine. Genocide. Lyra intended genocide. Across the palace, Mark, despite the throbbing ache in his bones and the metallic taste in his mouth, focused on the holographic displays flickering around his sickbed. His marine training, buried beneath years of wildlife photography, resurfaced with brutal efficiency. He saw the troop deployments, the security weaknesses, the political fault lines. He might be confined, weakened, but he wasn't helpless. "She'll come for you, Zara," he rasped into the secure comlink, his voice strained. "Lyra won't be satisfied with just the retrovirus. She'll want the throne. An assassination attempt soon. I guarantee it." Zara, her face grim, relayed Mark's assessment to her remaining loyal commanders. His analysis, cold and precise, cut through their fear and indecision. Within minutes, Mark, using the palace schematics and his tactical expertise, directed the redeployment of security forces, establishing a defensive perimeter around Zara's location. In the royal labs, chaos reigned. Vorkarian scientists, their multiple arms flailing, worked frantically to analyze the stolen retrovirus. The lead scientist, his voice tight with dread, contacted Zara. "Your Majesty, the retrovirus. It's been modified. It acts as a catalyst. In any Vorkarian exposed to human genetic material, it accelerates genetic decay. It's devastatingly effective." The news hit Zara like a physical blow. Lyra wasn't just trying to prevent a cure, she was weaponizing human DNA against the Vorkarian people. Lyra, meanwhile, launched her public offensive. Using carefully crafted propaganda disseminated through every Vorkarian comm channel, she painted Zara as an illegitimate ruler, corrupted by human influence, endangering the very future of the Vorkarian race. Images of mutated Vorkarians, twisted parodies of life, flashed across the screens, stirring fear and resentment. The effect was immediate. Several prominent noble houses, swayed by Lyra's lies and fearing the consequences of supporting Zara, publicly withdrew their allegiance, creating a dangerous power vacuum. Zara, despite the overwhelming risk, knew she had to act. Standing before the Vorkarian people, broadcast across every planet in the Empire, she delivered a defiant address. Her voice, amplified and modulated, resonated with unwavering conviction. "Vorkarians," she declared, her multifaceted eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Lyra spreads lies and fear. She seeks to divide us, to destroy what makes us strong. I will not allow it. I am committed to finding a solution, to curing this illness, to protecting our future. I ask for your trust, your loyalty, and your strength." Lyra responded with force. Under the cover of darkness, her forces launched a direct assault on the palace, hoping to capture Zara and seize control of the government. Laser fire ripped through the night, illuminating the towering spires of the royal complex. Explosions rocked the ground, shaking the very foundations of the Vorkarian capital. Confined to his quarters, sweat plastering his dark hair to his forehead, Mark directed the defense. His voice, hoarse but firm, crackled over the comlink. "Hold the perimeter. Focus fire on the main gate. They're trying to overwhelm the defenses." He barked orders, analyzed troop movements, and identified weak points, his mind racing despite his failing body. But Lyra had anticipated Mark's interference. A small, elite team of assassins, cloaked and armed with advanced weaponry, bypassed the main defenses and infiltrated the palace, moving swiftly and silently towards Zara's location. Mark, his senses heightened by adrenaline, felt a cold dread grip his heart. He knew Zara was in immediate danger. Ignoring the medical protocols, overriding the insistent warnings of the medical drones, he ripped the sensor patches from his chest and staggered out of his sickbed. "I have to get to her," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Zara, surrounded by a handful of loyal guards, braced herself as the assassins burst into her chamber. The air crackled with energy as laser fire scorched the walls. She fought bravely, her multi-jointed limbs moving with practiced precision, but the lingering effects of her injuries from rescuing Mark hindered her movements. She was tiring, and the assassins were relentless. Suddenly, a figure lunged into the room, a whirlwind of desperate fury. Mark, his face pale and drawn, his body trembling with weakness, threw himself between Zara and the assassins. He was no match for them, not in his condition, but he fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, his human resilience burning bright. He parried a laser blast with a stolen guard's weapon, the heat searing his skin. He delivered a brutal kick to the lead assassin, sending him staggering back. His movements were clumsy, his strength failing, but his drive was unwavering. Using a combination of marine-honed hand-to-hand combat and improvised tactics, he managed to temporarily subdue the assassins, buying Zara precious seconds. Just as the assassins began to regain their footing, reinforcements stormed into the room, driving them off with a barrage of laser fire. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the victory was short-lived. Mark, his body pushed beyond its limits, collapsed, his breath rattling in his chest. Zara rushed to his side, cradling his head in her arms. His skin was clammy, his eyes glazed over. Witnessing his sacrifice, the depth of his commitment to her and the Vorkarian people, a dam within her broke. "Mark," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Why?" He managed a weak smile. "Someone had to protect the queen," he rasped. Zara, her heart aching with a newfound love and a fierce commitment, vowed to defeat Lyra and restore order. "I will not let your sacrifice be in vain," she declared, her voice ringing with steely persistence. "I will avenge you and I will save our people." She rose to her feet, her gaze hardening. "Vorn," she commanded, her voice devoid of all emotion, "publicly imprison him for treason." The order, though necessary, tasted like ash in her mouth, the loss of a former friend a bitter pill to swallow. As medical drones swarmed around Mark, attempting to stabilize his condition, Zara received a chilling intelligence report. Lyra was planning to weaponize the modified retrovirus on a large scale, intending to disperse it through the ventilation systems of major Vorkarian cities, condemning millions to a slow and agonizing death. The stakes had just been raised to a level Zara had never imagined. The holographic projections flickered around the War Council chamber, casting an eerie green glow on the grim faces of Zara's advisors. Before them, a rotating three-dimensional model of the retrovirus shimmered, its complex structure a silent testament to Lyra's treachery. "The projections are unfavorable, Your Majesty," Counselor Valerius, his scaled face etched with worry, stated, his voice a low rumble. "If Lyra succeeds in dispersing this retrovirus, initial simulations predict widespread genetic decay within days. Mass casualties are unavoidable." Zara's mandibles clicked softly, a sign of deep contemplation. "A countermeasure." Chief Scientist Lorian, his multi-jointed fingers twitching nervously, responded, "We are working on an antidote, Your Majesty, but creating an effective sequence will take weeks. Time we do not have." "Then we must prevent its release," Zara stated, her voice resonating with regal authority. She addressed the council. "I want every resource dedicated to finding Lyra's base of operations and neutralizing the threat at its source." Zara dismissed the science team, then turned to her political advisors. "What of the noble houses? Have they offered their support?" Valerius hesitated. "Several houses remain unconvinced, Your Majesty. Lyra's propaganda regarding human contamination. It has taken root. They question the stability of your rule." Zara's silvery eyes narrowed. "Conditional support. Some houses offer their legions, but they require a demonstration of your commitment to Vorkarian purity, a public denouncement of the human, Mark Clark, and a purification ritual to cleanse your genetic line." Zara's fist clenched, the metallic screech of her gauntlet echoing in the chamber. The thought of betraying Mark, of submitting to their archaic demands, was abhorrent, but the lives of her people, "I will consider their request." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. Meanwhile, in his quarters, Mark, propped up against the bio-regenerative cushions, stared intently at the Vorkarian computer interface. The alien script scrolled past his eyes, translated in real time by a neural implant. He was deep inside the palace's network, tracing the retrovirus's origins. His fingers flew across the virtual keyboard, navigating firewalls and security protocols with surprising ease. He found it, a schematic of the palace's ventilation system, a complex network of conduits snaking through every level, every chamber, and highlighted in ominous crimson the dispersal system for the retrovirus. It was tied directly to the ventilation network. A shiver ran down his spine. He traced the activation protocols. It required a specific access code, a sequence known only to a handful of individuals. He pulled up a list: Zara, Valerius, Lorien, and Commander Rallos, a high-ranking member of Zara's personal guard. Zara, informed of Mark's discovery, summoned Rallos to the War Council chamber. The commander, a towering figure with a stern, unyielding face, stood rigidly before her. "Commander," Zara began, her voice cold, "it has come to my attention that you possess knowledge of the retrovirus dispersal system." Rallos' scaled face remained impassive. "That is correct, Your Majesty. As a member of your personal guard, I am privy to sensitive security protocols, including the access codes." "Yes, Your Majesty. Explain your connection to Lyra." Rallos' eyes widened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I have no connection to Lyra, Your Majesty. These are fabrications. The human spreads misinformation to destabilize the Empire." Zara signaled for the interrogation to begin. Rallos was subjected to a barrage of questions, his every word scrutinized, every micro-expression analyzed by advanced Vorkarian lie detection technology. He maintained his innocence, denying any involvement with Lyra. Mark, observing the interrogation remotely through a secure channel, frowned. Something wasn't right. Rallos' vital signs spiked subtly when Lyra's name was mentioned, but his conscious responses remained consistent. He was hiding something. "Your Majesty, with respect, I request a direct meeting with Commander Rallos," Mark transmitted to Zara. "I believe I can. Encourage him to be more forthcoming." Zara, after a moment's hesitation, granted his request. Mark entered the interrogation chamber. Rallos regarded him with disdain. "Human, your presence is an insult." Mark ignored the hostility. He stepped closer, meeting Rallos' gaze. "Commander, I understand your loyalty to the Vorkarian people. I see it in your eyes, but Lyra is not acting in their best interests. She's using you." Rallos scoffed. "I owe you no explanations, human." "Maybe not. But I know you're holding something back. Look, I'm not Vorkarian. I don't understand all the intricacies of your culture or your politics, but I know when someone is being manipulated. Tell me the truth, Rallos. What did Lyra do?" Mark's sincerity, his genuine concern, seemed to chip away at Rallos' stoic facade. The commander's shoulders slumped slightly. She threatened my family," Rallos confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "She showed me recordings, my children, if I did not cooperate." "What did she ask you to do?" "She needed access codes. For a routine system update," she said. "I provided a partial sequence. I swear I never divulged the full code." Mark pressed him. "What was the partial sequence?" Rallos gave it to him. Mark frowned. It was useless by itself. "Commander, what completes the sequence?" Rallos hesitated, his face contorted with anguish. "The final sequence. It's tied to Her Majesty's biometric signature. A retinal scan, a vocal pattern, a genetic marker. Lyra needs Zara to activate the dispersal system." The realization hit Mark like a physical blow. Lyra didn't just want to cripple the Vorkarian Empire. She wanted Zara, alive, or... A klaxon blared through the palace, its piercing wail cutting through the tense silence. Red lights flashed. "Intruders DETCTED. Sector 7 COMPROMICD. Repeat, intruders DETCTED." "Lyra," Zara hissed, her eyes blazing. "She's launched a second assault, more targeted this time." Mark's mind raced. He had to think, to plan. She needs your biometric signature, that's our leverage. He looked at Zara, his eyes locking with hers. We use it as bait, a trap. Zara stared at him, her expression unreadable. A trap? It is risky, human. We don't have a choice. She's coming for you either way. Zara considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. Very well, Mark, I trust your judgment. As Lyra's forces breached the inner defenses of the palace, Rollos, his face a mask of relentless drive, stepped forward. Your Majesty, allow me to atone for my weakness. I will delay them. Before Zara could protest, Rollos activated his personal energy shield and charged into the fray, a lone figure against a tide of armored warriors. His roar echoed through the corridors as he engaged the enemy, buying Zara and Mark precious time. Lyra, leading the assault herself, finally cornered Zara in the throne room. The room was in ruins, plasma fire having scarred the walls. Surrender, Zara, Lyra snarled, her voice amplified by her battle armor. Embrace the true Vorkarian way. Cast aside this human abomination and reclaim your heritage. Zara stood tall, defiant. I will not betray my people, nor will I betray those I trust. And with those words, she triggered Mark's trap. And let this act of betrayal serve as a testament to the lengths some will go to cling to outdated ideals, Zara declared, her voice amplified across the Vorkarian network. Her image, regal and unyielding, filled screens across the empire. Beside her, Mark stood tall, his expression a mask of quiet willpower. I reaffirm my commitment to Commander Mark Clark and to a future built on unity and understanding. Unbeknownst to Zara, embedded within her biometric signature, a silent signal pulsed outward, a beacon in the digital wilderness. It was Mark's trap, meticulously crafted and baited with Zara herself. The signal screamed across the network, a digital flare only Lyra could truly interpret, pinpointing Zara's exact location within the sprawling palace complex. Lyra, watching the broadcast from her hidden command center, slammed a fist against the console. The image of Zara, defiant and resolute, burned in her mind. Enough. She snarled, abandoning all pretense of strategic withdrawal. She chooses this contamination over her own people. Prepare for immediate assault. We strike now at the heart of the palace. Within Zara's command center, alarms blared to life. The palace defenses, already on high alert, tightened their grip. Mark, his marine training kicking in, barked orders. Seal off sectors Gamma through Epsilon. Redirect power to the shield generators. Prepare the energy disruptors. Lyra won't be subtle. He moved with a practiced economy of motion, transforming the opulent chamber into a makeshift war room. Zara, her face grim, activated the palace-wide defense grid. Her loyal guard, clad in shimmering armor, took their positions, weapons charged. The first wave of Lyra's assault crashed against the palace walls. Energy blasts ripped through the air, tearing chunks from the crystalline structure. But Lyra, in her rage, bypassed strategic targets, focusing solely on Zara's location. She led a hand-picked squad of elite Vorkarian soldiers, their faces grim and determined, directly toward the command center. As Lyra's squad breached the final defensive perimeter, Mark activated the next phase of his plan. A localized energy field shimmered into existence, bathing the corridor in an ethereal glow. Vorkarian technology sputtered and died. Weapons faltered, shields flickered, and the soldiers stumbled, disoriented. Chaos erupted. Mark, drawing his sidearm, moved to shield Zara. The corridor became a whirlwind of close-quarters combat. Mark, despite his lack of Vorkarian enhancements, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He used the confined space to his advantage, his movements precise and deadly, disarming and incapacitating Lyra's soldiers with brutal efficiency. Zara, wielding a ceremonial blade with surprising skill, defended herself against a pair of attackers, her movements fluid and lethal. Her royal guard, though hampered by the energy field, fought with unwavering loyalty, their energy weapons firing intermittently. Lyra, her face contorted with fury, shoved aside a fallen soldier. "You pathetic weakling," she screamed at Zara. "You've tarnished our legacy, opened the door to human contamination. You would sacrifice our purity for this." This infidel. Mark's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just about politics, it was about something far more dangerous, a twisted sense of racial purity. Lyra was a zealot, blinded by her own ideology. Lyra, fueled by her rage, lunged at Zara, overpowering her defenses. She raised her energy blade, ready to deliver the killing blow. "Your reign ends here." Before Lyra could strike, Mark threw himself in front of Zara, intercepting the blow. The energy blade grazed his side, searing his flesh, but he didn't flinch. He grappled with Lyra, his superior strength surprising her. As they struggled, Mark's unique genetic makeup, a legacy of his ancient ancestors, reacted unexpectedly with Lyra's Vorkarian weaponry. A surge of energy pulsed through the blade, overloading Lyra's armor. The intricate circuitry sparked and died, leaving her vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, Zara kicked Lyra's legs out from under her. The zealot crashed to the ground, her weapon clattering across the floor. Zara, her face grim, retrieved the blade and pointed it at Lyra's throat. "You are under arrest for treason, Lyra. Your actions will be judged by the Vorkarian people." With Lyra subdued and her forces rooted, a tense silence descended upon the command center. Zara, her chest heaving, lowered the blade. "Take her away," she commanded, her voice weary. "She will be imprisoned and tried publicly." In the aftermath of the battle, Zara turned to Mark, her eyes filled with gratitude and love. She reached out, gently touching his injured side. "You saved my life," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Mark smiled weakly, wincing in pain. "Just doing my job, Your Majesty." He reached up and cupped her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "Besides, I wasn't about to let anything happen to you." Their moment of intimacy was shattered by the arrival of a priority message from the Vorkarian Science Council. Zara activated the holographic display. The lead scientist, his face etched with concern, appeared on the screen. "Your Majesty, we have analyzed the residual effects of Lyra's retrovirus deployment. The results are catastrophic." "Explain," Zara commanded, her voice tight. "The retrovirus, while failing as a weapon, has mutated. It's no longer directly lethal, but it has drastically accelerated the fertility crisis. We are seeing widespread genetic instability across the Vorkarian population. The situation is far worse than we initially feared." As the scientists spoke, a wave of unease rippled through the Vorkarian network. News of Lyra's failed attempt and the subsequent mutation spread like wildfire. The nobles, sensing weakness, began to circle. Whispers turned into demands. A message, routed through multiple encrypted channels, finally reached Zara. It was a consensus from several powerful noble houses. "Denounce Clark. Publicly disavow your relationship with him. Prove that you are a true Vorkarian, committed to the survival of our race. Only then will we support your efforts to combat this crisis." Zara stared at the message, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. She loved Mark. She knew his unique perspective and his unwavering loyalty were vital to the future of her people. But she also understood the fear and desperation that gripped her people. They saw him as an outsider, a threat to their very existence. Her gaze drifted to Mark, who watched her with quiet understanding. The weight of the empire, the survival of her race, pressed down on her. What choice did she have? Zara, torn, her face a mask of regal composure that barely concealed the turmoil within, dismissed her remaining advisors with a curt nod. The heavy, obsidian doors of the throne room hissed shut, leaving her alone in the echoing vastness. She activated her personal comm, the Vorkarian script shimmering in the air before her. "Locate Mark Clark. I require a private audience. Immediately." Minutes later, Mark stood before her in her private chambers, the air thick with unspoken tension. The room, usually a sanctuary of calm, felt suffocating. Intricate crystalline structures cast fractured light across the polished floor, reflecting in Zara's troubled silver eyes. "The nobles," she began, her voice tight, "they grow increasingly agitated. They demand I sever all ties with you, publicly denounce you as a threat to Vorkarian purity." She gestured to a holographic display showcasing a barrage of political propaganda, each image a carefully crafted attack on Mark's human origins. "They claim your presence undermines my authority, that a half-human heir would weaken the empire." Mark listened, his eyebrows furrowed, absorbing the gravity of the situation. The weight of an entire civilization rested on Zara's shoulders, and his presence was only making it heavier. "I understand," he said, his voice low but firm. "Then I'll step back, voluntarily. I won't be the reason your people suffer." Zara's head snapped up, shock momentarily fracturing her regal facade. "What? You would leave?" "Not leave," Mark clarified. "Step back from the public eye. Let them focus their anger on something else. I can still work on a cure, just independently." Zara reluctantly conceded, her internal conflict evident in the tightening of her grip on the crystalline armrest. "Very well, but know this, Mark Clark, I do not share their sentiments. Your safety is paramount." She activated a hidden calm, her voice barely a whisper. "Commander Rel, discreetly increase security around Mark Clark. Any unusual activity is to be reported directly to me." Now operating from a secluded research lab beneath the palace, a space usually reserved for minor scientific endeavors, Mark felt the isolation keenly. The sleek Vorkarian equipment, while advanced, was alien to his touch. He missed his familiar tools, his well-worn notebooks. He stared at the complex molecular models of the mutated retrovirus, a knot forming in his stomach. He was missing something, a crucial piece of the puzzle. Days blurred into nights as Mark threw himself into his research. The Vorkarian databases, vast as they were, lacked the specific data he needed. He needed a human perspective, a different way of looking at the problem. He began experimenting with compounds derived from Earth plants, synthesizing them using the limited equipment available. He activated a secure comm channel, a clandestine communication he'd established with Counselor Zil, a member of the Science Council and Zara's most trusted advisor. Zil's holographic image flickered to life, her expression wary. "Clark, this is highly irregular. What do you require?" "Counselor, I need access to restricted data on the retrovirus's initial development. Specifically, any research notes from Lyra herself." Zil hesitated, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. "That information is classified. Why do you seek it?" "Because I believe the key to curing this lies in understanding how it was created. I can help, but not without all the pieces." Zil remained silent for a long moment, then sighed. "I am taking a considerable risk. I will provide limited access under strict confidentiality. But know this, Clark. If your actions jeopardize Her Majesty, I will not hesitate to terminate our agreement." Meanwhile, Zara descended into the deepest levels of the Vorkarian detention facility, the air growing heavy with the stench of disinfectant and despair. She stood before Lyra's cell, a shimmering energy field separating them. Lyra, despite her confinement, radiated defiance, her eyes burning with fanaticism. "Lyra," Zara said, her voice cold, Why unleash such a devastating weapon on our own people?" Lyra sneered. "It was not a weapon, Your Majesty, but a cleansing, a necessary evil to purge the contamination from our gene pool. The humans pollute everything they touch." "The mutation," Zara pressed, "was it intentional?" Lyra's expression flickered, a brief glimpse of something akin to regret crossing her features. "Unforeseen, perhaps, but ultimately beneficial. Only the strong, the pure, should survive." Zara realized then that Lyra was beyond reason, lost in her own twisted ideology, but her words had provided a crucial clue. The retrovirus's intended targets. She turned and left the cell, the chilling fanaticism of Lyra echoing in her mind. Back in his makeshift lab, Mark received the data from Counselor Zil, along with a cryptic message. Lyra's initial research focused on targeting specific genetic markers associated with emotional vulnerability. A chill ran down Mark's spine. Emotional vulnerability. That was the key. He needed a sample of Lyra's DNA, a baseline to compare against the mutated virus. He contacted Counselor Zill again, his voice urgent. I need a sample of Lyra's DNA. It's the only way I can be sure. Zill's image wavered, her voice permeated with anxiety. Clark, you ask too much. This is exceedingly dangerous, but I will comply. One sample, that is all. News of Mark's independent investigation inevitably reached the ears of the nobles. Whispers turned into accusations, accusations into demands. They saw it as an act of defiance, a blatant disregard for their authority. They issued an ultimatum. Zara must publicly denounce Mark and sever all ties with him, or they would withdraw their support for her efforts to combat the fertility crisis. The empire teetered on the brink of collapse. Counselor Zill contacted Mark, her holographic image flickering with distress. Clark, you must stop. Your actions are jeopardizing everything. The nobles are threatening to withdraw their support. You are endangering the entire Vorkarian race. Mark refused to yield, his gaze unwavering. I'm close, Counselor. I can feel it. I just need a little more time. He received the DNA sample, a shimmering vial of genetic code, and began the analysis. Facing insurmountable pressure, Zara addressed the Vorkarian people, her image broadcast across the empire. Her voice, usually strong and resolute, trembled slightly. My loyal subjects, she began, I understand your concerns regarding the human presence in our court. Therefore, I have made the difficult decision to temporarily suspend my relationship with Mark Clark. My priority above all else is the survival of the Vorkarian people. As the broadcast ended, Zara activated a secure, encrypted comm channel, her fingers flying across the console. A coded message flashed across Mark's screen. My dearest Mark, this is a strategic maneuver. Trust me. I still love you, be safe. Z, in his secluded lab, Mark read Zara's message, his heart aching with a mixture of hope and despair. He knew the risks she was taking, the sacrifices she was making. He clenched his fist, his persistence hardening. He would not let her down. He would find a cure. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the palace, Zara prepared for a dangerous gamble, a desperate plan to protect Mark and her people, a plan that could either save the Vorkarian Empire or plunge it into irreversible chaos. The Vorkarian genetics lab hummed with an energy Mark was slowly getting used to. Bioluminescent cables snaked across the walls, feeding power to humming crystal arrays. He stared at the holographic projection of Lyra's DNA, the double helix shimmering with alien colors. There it is, he muttered, running a virtual finger along a previously uncharted sequence. A genetic marker, linked to the virus resistance, but it's inactive, needs a catalyst. According to the Vorkarian database, that catalyst was a specific enzyme found only in the Sylvanus lux, a rare plant native to the volcanic plains of Vorka Prime. In her private chambers, Zara reviewed Mark's findings. The desperation in his voice during their last comlink echoed in her mind. She activated a secure channel to Minister Valerius, her most trusted advisor. Valerius, I require a sample of Sylvanus lux, high priority. Claim it's for a broad spectrum study on xenobotanical properties. Discretion is paramount. She ended the transmission, a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. This charade of distance from Mark was becoming increasingly difficult. Across the city, in the opulent halls of House Vorlag, Counselor Morian steepled his fingers, his reptilian eyes glinting with malice. The Queen's sudden interest in rare flora is intriguing, especially given the Earthling's presence. He gestured to a holographic display showing Zara's order for the Sylvanus lux. Intercept the shipment. Analyze it. I suspect we'll find a connection to her pet human. Zara, anticipating such treachery, had already rerouted the primary shipment. A decoy, filled with common Vorkarian herbs, was making its way to House Vorlag's eager hands. The real Sylvanus Lux sample, carefully sealed in a diplomatic pouch, was being transported via a freighter bound for a neutral trade station, from where it would be discreetly rerouted to Mark's lab. Days later, Mark held the Sylvanus Lux sample under the scanning light, its leaves shimmering with an ethereal glow. "Got it," he breathed, isolating the enzyme. "This could actually work." He spent hours synthesizing the enzyme, his focus absolute, the fate of the Vorkarian people resting on his shoulders. But synthesizing the cure required more than just the enzyme. "Damn it," Mark exclaimed, reviewing the data. "I need rhodium-viridium alloy, and from what I can tell, Counselor Thane is hoarding it all." Zara, receiving Mark's report, felt a surge of frustration. Counselor Thane, a notorious opportunist, would exploit this crisis for his own gain. She summoned him to her chambers. "Thane, I require a quantity of rhodium-viridium alloy for a critical medical project." Thane, a hulking Vorkarian with eyes like chips of obsidian, sneered. "A request, Your Majesty, or an order. My reserves are limited. And my loyalty is to the Council, not to experiments that undermine Vorkarian purity." Zara's violet eyes narrowed. "This is not a request, Thane. It is a matter of life and death for our people." "Then perhaps," Thane countered, "you should have considered that before consorting with an alien." He turned and strode out, leaving Zara seething with impotent rage. "He leaves me no choice," she murmured, activating a secure comm link to Mark. "I need your help. We're going to acquire that alloy." That night, under the crimson glow of Vorka Prime's twin moons, Mark stood before the heavily guarded vault of Counselor Thane. "All right, Zara, what's the plan?" "The vault is protected by a multi-phasic energy field and sonic dampeners. I can disable the dampeners remotely, but the energy field requires a human touch. You need to overload the primary regulator." Mark grinned. "Sounds like my kind of party." He pulled out a modified sonic disruptor he'd cobbled together from spare parts. Distraction time. He set the disruptor to overload, aiming it at a nearby power conduit. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, followed by a spectacular shower of sparks as the conduit exploded, plunging the area into temporary darkness. Inside the vault, Zara moved with practiced efficiency, bypassing security grids with her neural interface. She reached the alloy cache, a shimmering pile of metallic crystals. Just as she was about to scoop them into a containment unit, a security drone whirred into the vault. "Intruder alert!" It blared. Zara reacted instantly, disabling the drone with a precise energy blast, but the alarm had been triggered. She grabbed a handful of the alloy, all she could carry, and fled, just as Thane's guards stormed into the vault. Mark, hearing the commotion, knew their time was up. He triggered a secondary explosion, creating a smokescreen that allowed Zara to escape. They rendezvoused at their designated extraction point, breathless but triumphant. Back in the lab, Mark worked tirelessly, synthesizing a small batch of the cure. "It's not enough for everyone," he said grimly, holding up a vial filled with shimmering liquid. "But it's a start." Zara, defying the Council's orders, selected a group of infected Vorkarians, including several children, and administered the cure. She monitored their progress around the clock, her hopes rising with each positive sign. But news of her unauthorized trial had reached the Council. Counselor Morian, his face contorted with righteous indignation, addressed the assembly. "Zara has violated the sacred protocols. She has endangered our people with an untested alien concoction. I move for her immediate removal from power." As the infected Vorkarians began to show signs of recovery, Mark realized something else. Zara, Lyra's resistance. It's not just the enzyme. It's something in her Earth DNA, something that reacts with the virus. I think I know what it is. It's a type of fulvic acid. It's common in Earth soil. You should be able to start producing it in a lab. Zara now stood before the Vorkarian Council, accused of treason. The chamber was filled with tension, the air thick with disapproval. She stepped forward, her voice ringing with unwavering conviction. "I stand accused of defying the council, of risking the lives of our people. And I say to you now, I would risk it all again. Our people are dying, our race is fading. Are we to stand idly by, bound by ancient rules while our children perish? I chose to act. I chose to save lives. And if that is treason, then I embrace the title." The grand hall of the Vorkarian High Court felt colder than the vacuum of space. Zara, her face an impassive mask, stood as the final arguments were presented. Counselor Morath, a hulking figure with eyes like chips of obsidian, spat out his accusations. "She has endangered our genetic purity. She has embraced an alien. She has risked the very future of our race on a whim." His voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by the crystalline structures that lined the walls. Mark, standing beside Zara, felt a surge of protective anger. He stepped forward, his boots echoing on the polished floor. "With respect, Counselor," he began, his voice clear and steady, "you are mistaken. I am not a threat, I am an opportunity." He activated the holographic projector he had brought, displaying a series of complex genetic sequences. "This data," he said, pointing to the swirling patterns of light, "proves the efficacy of the cure Zara implemented. It also shows the unique ability of humans to adapt and innovate. We are not stagnant, we evolve, and that evolution sin save you." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Furthermore," Mark continued, "I have identified a substance, readily available on Earth, that is crucial to the mass production of this cure. It's called penicillin. It's simple, it's effective, and it can save your people." Zara stepped forward, her voice resonating with newfound strength. "Therefore, I announce my intention to establish formal trade relations with Earth. We will exchange technology and knowledge, benefiting both our species." A murmur rippled through the court. Then Counselor Vorn, a key noble known for his unwavering loyalty to tradition, stepped forward. His face was etched with conflict. I have seen the data," he confessed, his voice trembling slightly. "I have also seen the corruption that festers within this court. We have been blinded by fear and tradition." He turned to Zara. "I was wrong, Your Majesty, forgive me." The tide had turned. Within weeks, the Vorkarian factories were humming with activity, producing the fertility cure on a massive scale. Hope, a sensation long absent, bloomed in the hearts of the Vorkarian people. Children, once a rarity, were now seen playing in the streets, their laughter echoing through the cities. The High Court delivered its verdict. Zara was found not guilty. Her actions were deemed necessary, even heroic, for the survival of her people. The corrupt nobles were stripped of their power and banished. The Vorkarian people, witnessing the success of the cure and the genuine affection between Zara and Mark, began to embrace the idea of a human consort. The rigid traditions of the past were slowly giving way to a new era of acceptance. Later, in the privacy of their chambers, Zara turned to Mark, her eyes filled with an emotion he had rarely seen, pure, unadulterated love. "You saved us, Mark," she whispered, reaching out to touch his face. "You saved my people and you saved me." He took her hand in his heart swelling with emotion. "We saved them, Zara," he corrected gently. "Together." Zara smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that transformed her face. "There is one more thing," she said, her voice soft. Our unique genetics have resulted in a development. We will have a child, Mark. You will be the father of the next Vorkarian heir." Mark's breath caught in his throat. He was going to be a father, to the future ruler of an alien empire. The weight of the responsibility was immense, but the love he felt for Zara was even greater. 9 months later, in a birthing chamber filled with advanced Vorkarian technology, Zara gave birth to a son. He was a beautiful child, with Zara's strong Vorkarian features softened by Mark's human warmth. His eyes, when he opened them, were the same shade of blue as the Earth's sky. He was a symbol of unity, a living testament to the power of love and understanding. Years passed. The Vorkarian and human civilizations flourished, engaging in a mutually beneficial exchange of technology, culture, and ideas. Vorkarian warp drives revolutionized human space travel, while human medical advancements eradicated diseases that had plagued the Vorkarian people for centuries. Mark, now a respected advisor to Zara, played a crucial role in shaping the future of both species. He used his unique human perspective to bridge cultural divides and foster cooperation. The final scene. Mark and Zara stood on a balcony overlooking the Vorkarian capital, their son, a young boy with a curious mind and a kind heart, playing at their feet. "He will be a great leader, Mark," Zara said, her voice filled with pride. Mark smiled, his arm around her shoulders. "He will," he agreed. "But he will also need our guidance. We must teach him the importance of understanding, of empathy, of cooperation. We must show him that even the greatest differences can be overcome with love." He looked out at the city, at the Vorkarian people going about their lives, at the human ships landing in the spaceports. "The future is bright, Zara," he said. "But it will only stay that way if we continue to work together." Zara leaned against him, her hand resting on his. "Together," she echoed, her voice filled with love and hope. The sun set over the Vorkarian capital, casting a warm glow on the faces of the human and the alien, united by love and a shared vision of a better future.